And so it has come to this, the main event, 2022's Game of the Year. First up, our Roll of Honor. Previous winners, 2015, we had Super Mario Maker in third, Metal Gear Solid 5 in second, The Witcher first. In 2016, SuperHot third, Doom second, Hitman first. In 2017, we had Cuphead third and a joint winner of Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey, which still gets me to this day. 2018, we had Celeste in third, God of War second, Marvel Spider-Man first. 2019, Outer Wilds third, Control second, Ape Out first. 2020, Hades third, Last of Us Part 2 second, Paradise Killer first. And in 2021, Hitman 3 third, Resident Evil Village second, and Psychonauts 2 first. Sorry, Jack.
I'm glad you got that one in order correctly this time, Dave.
Yes. I am. It's a weighty list. Like there's a lot of Stone Cold classics on there.
How many times do you think we're going to do Game of the Year before we've done it so many times that you look at our list of winners and go, you know what, we don't need to recite that anymore. We're good.
Yeah. Or we do like a New Japan style like list of previous champions montage.
As like a somber little video, just
like
here's still images.
Head, Dave.
Yeah,
and each category is going to need its own theme as well. Right, that's it.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. We'll start working on those videos. We have a full year. We might get one of them done by next year.
The prestigious Game of the Year winner video. It's just like, oh, there's Geralt, there's 47, there's Hiroshi Hase. They're all just all the lads just hanging out.
Just a big old ape.
Do it like the Keeleys with a full orchestra as well. Put it up on the
screen. So this is the only category for which we settle on an ordered list of 3. That's quite chaotic in and of itself, but it's also the one where every single game that gets nominated, I throw onto the short list. We don't just stick to 10 with this one. So with a deep inhale and channeling my best Excalibur with 30 seconds left on the broadcast, your nominees are Windjammers 2, Elden Ring, Splatoon 3, Neon White, Tinykin, Vampire Survivors, Marvel Snap, Immortality, Return to Monkey Island, Live Alive, Signalis, Olli World, Citizen Sleeper, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Tunic, God of War Ragnarok, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Norco, Rumbleverse, SiFu, Rollerdome, Powerwash Simulator, Pokémon Legends Arceus, Card Shark, Stray, 2 Point Campus.
Whew. Can I say 2 things about that list? One,
yes.
That's a powerful list of video games.
Yeah,
excellent.
2, just look at the lack of AAA titles in there. Like, there's not been that many this year. And I was reading something earlier about if you look at like Sony first party and Microsoft first party, like there's been one first party Microsoft game this year. Do you know what it is?
Yeah. What?
It's Pentiment.
Yeah.
That's not making it on this list.
Which we didn't get to.
Which we didn't get to, unfortunately.
Well, also, do you know what I was thinking during the gap between? I was kind of thinking similar to you, where I was like, wow, the AAA games really loaded up Ham Sandwich this year as opposed to Game of the Year. But also, something that I should have had a late write-in shout for Ham Sandwich or Disappointment of the Year, depending on how I was feeling that day. Completely forgot that Dying Light 2 came out this year.
Oh yeah. I think that suffers from earliness in the year, but also being one of those 7 million hour long things.
Yeah.
Where
do you remember Overwatch 2 came out this year as well?
Yeah. That I
kind of, but not for any kind of positive reason.
Yeah.
That's also the funny thing is, I'm glad none of us are really. I mean, obviously, it was a big winner when the first one came out. I'm glad none of us are big Overwatch people, because there's a debate we'd have to have about whether or not that's a new game or a fucking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that is like if you. I heard recently that if you go to like CEX and buy an Overwatch 1 disc and put it in, it will boot up Overwatch 2. It's a perfect game to come out in the year of Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, because it is a completely bizarre sequel, not sequel 0.5 expansion pack piece of bullshit.
Yeah. Right, for one final time, gentlemen, let's consult the wheel and see who is going to go first in this biggest of categories.
Will.
Starting us off this year, the honor is given to Barry.
Oh wow. Thank you, Will, for gracing me. I will say, to kick us off here, Stray. We've talked a lot about it in fairly mixed tones. I think we've maybe been a little bit harsh on it.
Nah,
Stray
fuck
is a
it.
very good. No, Stray is a fun little game.
But we've been a little bit harsh on it, like cutting it first on this list of like.
No,
funny little
listen,
games.
hey, guys. Everything nominated is a great game. Okay,
We're all
they're
winners here.
They're all great. I mean, I didn't play Pokemon. I'll take your word on it. You know, they're all winners. They are all lovely girls. But Stray, I think the consensus from our earlier conversations is that the hype dwarfed the actual game, which is not the game's fault, but leaving the hype and all the online conversation out of it, which I think we should do anyway, this was a nice little game. If I can put that patronizing label on it, that's what it is.
It's not. We really need to be harsh and like in this category and think like, is it going to make top 3?
Well,
and I think
that's also it as well. Yeah,
just based on our, like you said, the conflicting thoughts early on, I don't think it has a hope in hell.
Look, not to bring up the Keeleys with every single game we talk about this year, but you look at the list of nominations for Game of the Year in the Keeleys, and one of those games sticks out more than the other in terms of what the fuck is that doing in there?
Right.
And why is it in there? And, you know, that's a whole nother debate for another day.
Elden
And
Ring.
that game is a Plague Tale Requiem.
I actually did think that game when he said it, Garrett. I was thinking that exactly. It's like I totally agree with this point on Stray, but also when I saw that Plague Tale one, I was like,
but it is. It's like Stray is a lovely little game. I don't really have any complaints about it, but like I'm also sitting there thinking there's nothing here that is truly remarkable. It's a really well polished AAA-ish looking style game made by a small studio, which in itself is a very impressive feat. And, you know, for that, the studio is applauded. Absolutely. But just no, it's just not Game of the Year. Not even close.
I just crunching in my head there. Like, thank God we all have like a reasonable amount of takes of Game of the Year in common, because now that there's 5 of us on the show, we could conceivably have had 50 nominees in this category. And
I noticed Nobody Saves the World didn't make this list, by the way. I'm pretty sure I dominated.
Oh, well,
shout out
we'll
to Nobody
throw it
Saves the World.
Well, we'll throw it in there.
So somebody can cut it. You can add it in so somebody can cut it. But shout out to Nobody Saves the World.
It didn't make the cut when I put it in for the ham sandwich either. So maybe
it's above a ham sandwich.
Is it?
That is in the 8 out of 10. Like it's above a ham sandwich.
It is a front runner for a very good Game of the Year.
I think it's that and Cult of the Lamb front runner for.
Oh my God, is Cult of the Lamb not on this list?
That doesn't end. Well, yeah, because I think Cult of the Lamb, like we all were in agreement that it
I think we
really
all
well.
soured on it too much to put it in Game of the Year.
Like, I think it's actually fair that it's not, but I'm like kind of I think everyone's kind of gutted it's not better than it is.
Yeah,
I played an hour of it and immediately went onto the spreadsheet and put it on there for Game of the Year. And by the time I was finished, sheepishly took it down. Like,
yeah, I think this is a good interval to talk about the things that
So
they probably should have been better and maybe been on the list, you know.
Halo Infinite, Dave, you've not put on the list as well.
Yeah, because that fell off for me personally. Did you have it nominated?
No, but you had it on your top 10.
Yeah. I didn't think it had a realistic hope of hanging. So
I had Halo Infinite on till about November.
Yeah, I had it on for, and I think by default of like there wasn't 10 things I was super passionate about. Like I talked about it in my article about how like I really enjoyed my time with the campaign. Is it something I'm going to tell people like go out of your way to play? Not necessarily, but sometimes like you get a big kind of dumb single player shooter at that kind of dead spot of the year where nothing's coming out, and it was like exactly what I needed right then. But yeah, it didn't have a hope in hell really. So like on and off the list.
Yeah, and the only thing that of anyone else's you didn't put on was Nobody Saves the World from Garrett.
Yeah,
just to spite me.
Yeah, of course.
Just for this.
Next up we have Jack.
Okay.
This is where he just takes off. Nobody saves the world.
There's an easy one right there.
Tell you it's not going to save the world, Jack.
Did you just? Oh, so you've actually put it onto the list now?
It's on there. It's on there.
Yeah, get it off the list. I mean, come on now. Make the list in the first place, and nobody noticed. Then why is we can't really?
I will say I'll say kind things about Nobody Saves the World, in which I would say it's not Game of the Year. It is again front runner for very good Game of the Year. If we had a category between Game of the Year and Ham Sandwich, it would fit right in there. I think it's just a really cool little checklist game where it's like, here's like 3 objectives, and then here's another 5, and then here's another 7, and they're all very small. They're all like kill 3 enemies or find so many like gold or use this move so many times and they're all very simple and straightforward, but it's the little brain ticking off as you satisfyingly do all of those little tasks. And I just love all the transformations. I think that's what makes the game really cool, that there's all those different transformations that you can chop and change, and you can move the moves around from, and they give you like enough incentive in the actual mechanics of the game itself to actually chop and change them. And some of them are terrible, and that's kind of part of the fun. I think it's a cool little game.
I do appreciate that it really strives to not just have your typical classes of mage and archer and warrior, and you have like fucking mermaid and egg.
Nice.
Really fun. I mean, I love egg. So I was always going to come into Nobody Saved the World with, with giving them the benefit of the doubt. But no, I think this is a really tremendous. It's not quite as Zelda-like, but if you're going to immediately tie it to something, it has that top-down, open adventure sort of vibe to it. But it's more, as you say, Garrett, in the kind of checklist sort of vibe of things. But yeah, it does a great job of incentivizing using all the different classes, varying up the moves that you can use between those classes, and just a really great kind of like dungeon crawler style sort of game, and an easy recommendation. I presume it's still on Game Pass to check out if you haven't already.
Mark, we're sticking with you next.
Now I'd been threatening throughout the year to Garrett in person that if I got to Tunic, Garrett in general, that if I got to Tunic before him, I would strike it off so he wouldn't have the pleasure of doing so. And there's part of me that wants to do that, but then there's part of me that, like, I've gone back over Tunic over the last week. I played a little bit of it. I watched Danny O'Dwyer did a short like a little interview with the developer about it, and there's so much about that game. And like, so I guess this will be where I do my first announcement of this. I'm making a game next year, so I just looking and listening to
Link to the Cast exclusive.
Listening to
I can't wait to put it in most disappointing game of next year.
Vicious.
I'm going to tread very carefully, I guess, for the next 2 hours or so. But just the little things that he talks about, the little kind of bits and pieces he does to make players aware of certain things, like where the world is, where like the kind of how to use lighting in an effective way. There's so many little touches to that game that I think it's a really, really just wonderfully crafted game that just some people struggled with. And in fairness, some of those puzzles in that game are very, very obtuse, and I can understand that you would look at it and go, what the fuck, why would I do that? But hey, original Legend of Zelda is exactly the same. It's still revered as like one of the greatest. So
yeah, because it was a game that was made in 1980. If the original Legend of Zelda released in 2022, people would hate its guts. Like, it's because it released in 1985 that people are like,
Tunic is far more clever and inventive in its puzzles, even though the core frustrations of the two, I fully understand them, but I still think that Tunic does some much more kind of inventive things with those puzzles it has.
I did my Game of the Year video over Christmas, and
I saw it was very good.
I grabbed like 30 seconds of Tunic just to throw in the intro, and I hated every single bit of it. Just have to grab 30 seconds of that stupid shitty game where I'm just like mad at the combat all over again. I don't like that game. I really don't. And it was when it was hyped up as this year's Death's Door, which was my Game of the Year last year, that set the hype through the roof, and it could not possibly have met it.
On my way to being disappointed in Tunic this year, I did have that moment where I was like, I would much rather just be playing Death's Door again.
Because I remember
absolutely rocked.
My tweet I made when I finished Tunic, because I did put Tunic.
Yes, you did.
Death's Door.
I wrote that down right next to when you said Midnight Fight Express was better than SiFu. I wrote that one down as well.
Do you know what? Of the two tweets, I regret that one more. I will retract that. I will go find the tweet and I will delete it. All right. But the mistake I made with Tunic and Death's Door is that they're not if you look at them immediately, yes, they're both like isometric adventure style games. On that comparison, you can go, oh yeah, they look quite similar, but they're actually very, very different games, like mechanically and tonally and just across the board, they're very, very different games. So, you know,
but even both like deal with use the world as a puzzle. Like you have Death's Door has all those like little things where you find little nooks and crannies, and the things you find are useful as opposed to most of the things in this game where it's like they're like what really like grinded my gears when I looked up the solution to those puzzles is like what you get for them is collectibles. So not only are they completely like obtuse, unsolvable monstrosities, but you also get nothing for doing them.
Well, that's not technically
the
true.
Satisfaction of solving the puzzle.
They all act towards the secret ending. Like
Mickey Mouse is showing up, everybody.
And
Garrett, you just need to look at your monitor upside down and then change your internal clock to 3 a.m.
And Garrett,
Plug the controller into port number 2.
I don't think we got you on record for this, but Garrett, what did you think of the manual mechanic in that game? Just
don't, Dave, don't. Oh, thank God you told me about the shortcut after I played the game for 2 hours that I couldn't have avoided playing the game for 2 hours. I don't like that. I hate that.
The art on that manual is pretty cool, though. It's a pretty cool looking
again.
manual.
It's like I think the idea of the manual is great, but then what the actual like function of the manual is in the game is just like, oh, we kind of wasted your time and then told you about things that couldn't have wasted your time. And then I'm just mad.
I think that's Tunic writ large. To be honest, I think it's a bunch of really cool ideas and things that.
And I just love the just the feeling of the game, just in terms of like, you know, I'm a sucker for that kind of low poly style, but I think that Tunic in particular has a really just ethereal but warm like low poly approach to it. And I think a lot of it's in the lighting, but just the music as well. I think Tunic actually is a really underrated soundtrack, and even I didn't put it in because, you know, it's not as immediate as some of the other things. Neon White Robs, by the way, just to put that back in there.
Let's not.
But you know what? Just because of the vitriol I can see from Garrett, I will take Tunic off because I don't want to give him that satisfaction.
Can I present an alternate? Keep it on so that we can have the narrative payoff of Garrett killing it.
Nope.
He won't give him that satisfaction. What are you talking about?
I don't see how that works in my favor. No, I'm good, thanks. I will take Tunic off.
I respect the hell out of Mark. Mark, after the last 5 minutes of this podcast, Mark deserves that W. Don't take it from him.
Because to be honest, it's about the only fucking W I'm going to get this year.
He has thoroughly controlled his narrative.
Mark Robinson, Untitled Game of the Year 2023. Start the campaign now.
Okay, it's my turn. For all the reasons I talked about it in Ham Sandwich, sorry, Jack. Powerwash Simulator is not Game of the Year.
I feel like by definition, you cannot give Ham Sandwich Game of the Year. That's not how it works.
It's Ham Sandwich of the Year.
You say that, but it's in my top 10 list.
Is it in your top 3?
Is it in my top 3? Well,
okay, goodbye.
I tell you what, with some of the games on here, I feel like it's a better game than most of the games that are on this list. But yeah, Powerwash Simulator.
I know, but God of War will come off soon enough. Don't worry. I mean, you know, it's going to happen.
There's some games on here that I would much rather play Powerwash Simulator than even play again some of the games I've actually played, I would say.
But the thing, look, you made the point on like when we were talking about Powerwash Simulator during Ham Sandwich, how like maybe it actually might have even been during the Peter Willington show we did. I can't remember which one now, but it was like, here is an idea, and like the idea itself is never going to go past a 7 out of 10. But in terms of the execution of that idea,
perfect.
It's perfect.
We talked on
perfect game for that
on that Peter show about the 10 out of 10, 7 out of 10.
Yeah,
it's still a 7 out of 10. It was a 10 out of 10. One of those.
But the thing is, like, you're never, you're right. It's the game itself is never going to go beyond that, but it's a really fucking good game. It is the best version of it that it could possibly be. And I was more satisfied with it than I thought I'd ever be just watching, you know, other people play it or any clips of it. I just saw a little bit, saw it was on Game Pass, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to play this and see how it plays, thinking I'd maybe play half an hour of it just so I could talk about it on Game of the Year. But I played through the whole game, and it's just a really satisfying itch to scratch. And yeah, I've made the points about how much I love it on that Ham Sandwich special, which is available on all your good podcast apps right now, and on the earlier category on here as to how much fun I think it is. And just it's a really great game, but I can't say that it's gonna make it to the top 3.
Can I say it does have one massive issue? All right, nope. I have spent at least 20 minutes on one part of a wall where it's telling me that it's like 99% clear, but I can't see however many times I hit that fucking Batman radar thing. I cannot see the dirt there. and I am spraying every fucking inch of that goddamn wall, and it's still not giving me that ding.
Right. Clearly not, bro, because I didn't have that problem myself. You have to get good. Get good, you know.
You have to get good.
Everybody spends all this time getting really good at their From Software fancy pants game, whereas I'm clean and shit, and I'm doing it well. So I want to fuck around with this section.
He's so committed that I feel like when we like finish this show, Jack's gonna be like, I actually didn't like Powerwash Simulator, guys.
No, I didn't like it. I loved it. There you go. Yeah, I am the 10cc man when it comes to Powerwash Simulator. I actually thought, I don't think in my wildest dreams it would even make a top 10 if we were actually making a top 10 category here, right? But I thought that maybe one or two others on the cast might have enjoyed it as much as I did, but clearly not. So I guess I'm happy to let it go.
Garrett, do you want to do Tunic again?
No, can I? There is a game I'm inclined to take here, but it's a Mark game, so I don't want to be mean. So I'll go for Return to Monkey Island, which I think is a very cool game that exists. I'm very happy it exists. It's really cool that Ron Gilbert and Dave Grossman got to go back and make this game after 30 years. And there's a lovely thing when you finish the game where they give you a letter they wrote basically to themselves at the start of development, talking about, it's like, this is what we want to achieve, this is what we want to go for, and it's just a really nice game that exists, but it's not Game of the Year. I love the ending. Anyone that doesn't like the ending's wrong.
And even just outside of like the fact that they go back to their game and you know revisit these characters, I think that it does a bunch of things mechanically that
the hint book.
Yeah, like now I haven't played a lot of modern point and click, so I can't speak for if this is like a new thing exclusive to Return to Monkey Island, or they've aped on from similar point and click games recently that have done a similar thing. But like the hint book and the way that, because there's such a delicate balance that you have to find about giving players clues if they're stuck and they have no idea what to do, but doing it in a way where it doesn't feel like, you know, you're just being dragged through. Like, here, like I don't need to. This is the clue. This is the puzzle. I present it to you, and just here. You don't have to solve it. You don't have to think about it. It's there. And the way that, you know, Return to Monkey Island does that in a way where it's like, if you want to know something, the game will tell you, but you have to go and literally like look in the book, in the manual. And even then, it's not like this is how you solve it. It's a kind of progression of.
Yeah, it's layered. It's like, you might want to go look over here. And then you like, I still don't know what you're talking about. Then you could be like, you might want to go over here and talk to this person. And then you're like, I'm still clueless. And you go all the way down to, you fucking stupid idiot. You go here, talk to this person, do this, give them that. Like there's like usually 3 or 4 or 5 layers to each objective where you can be like, I'm stuck and I don't know where to go, and they'll guide you. Or it's like, I am utterly clueless and they'll tell you exactly what to do. It's like the new gold standard for hints in video games. Because as you said, it's not just the character saying, hey, you might want to move that box over to that ledge. It's like, oh, thank you for solving the puzzle immediately. It is literally as much or as little as you want. And even like the little check mark system in the game where they tell you like the to-do list, the things you're supposed to be doing, just so you can keep track of those. And I think a really nice touch of game design, there's never just one. Like in this game, it's never just one thing you need to do. It's usually 3 or 4, so that if you're stuck on one, you naturally like wander off and try and do one of the other ones. I think like the games should have this hint system in them, all of them. It's the gold standard for it.
It's also the one game I'll allow voice acting, just the one. It gets
just the one.
That's it. Jesus, I completely forgot about that. Putrid take. We're back around to Barry.
Okay, I think I'll cut one of my own here because we're already getting into spicy territory. I'll just Rumbleverse. Gave it its shout out in multiplayer. It's a very fun thing, but not close to a top 3 of the year for me. Even on my own personal list, it was not top 3. So we'll bid farewell to it.
We're all being very noble tonight. So
I was debating getting super spicy, but I was like, the night is too young for that. We're going to get to all these games anyway, so yeah.
And my pick was purely done out of spite. Like, let's
also, you went straight for one of my games, Dave. So F you, son.
Yeah. No, I'm a spice merchant.
You can't be saying noble and then be cutting people's games.
I'll get in the mud.
You cut Nobody Saves the World 30 seconds after it was added to the list. You cannot give out to Dave.
I was hoping no one would remember that.
Okay, Jack.
No, that's right. What else is Garrett's favorite?
There's one here that Garrett will come through the screen for.
Gross. I think
It's a PG show, goddammit.
Yeah, well, there was something on this list that I was going to cut, but I actually can't see it on this list anymore, which is odd. Which was 2 Point Campus.
Was that on the
next
page?
it went on to the next page because
Okay.
Aha! There you go. Yep. Sorry. So I'm still looking at the list here. This is the chaos you cause by adding Nobody Saves the World, Garrett. God damn it. But
yeah, Jack has made his thoughts about adding games at the last minute very clear.
Well, yes, that's well documented, So
Jack, that's the reason he's like, not again. Never again.
Never happening again. Never ever again. No, so I'm gonna cut 2 Point Campus. I had a lot of fun with 2 Point Campus. I didn't play 2 Point Hospital as much. I played it a little bit and I enjoyed it. I got way deeper into 2 Point Campus. I think it just kind of scratched the itch that I have in my brain, that goes back to the roller coaster tycoon days of, taking an area and then developing it and, using all of the bits and pieces to upgrade different parts and, having your guests, or in this case, your students, keeping their happiness levels up, figuring out the mechanics, turning a profit, making sure that everything works. And it's just, I love those sort of simulation games, and I've played a lot of them. And there are very few that I found as satisfying to play as 2 Point Campus. I think 2 Point Campus absolutely nailed this kind of management sim, and the graphical flow and style. And it really, it did. I just got massive Chris Sawyer roller coaster tycoon vibes from it. It's not that good, because if it was, I probably wouldn't be cutting it now. But it's on the way to being that good. It's a really fun game to play. But I can't really see it hanging with some absolute mega beasts. And we haven't really spoken about it anywhere else on Game of the Year, so I think it definitely deserves a shout out. And I know you played a little bit of it, Mark, as well, right? 2 Point Campus, and it's one of those.
It is. I don't think it stands out in any particular area, because I always feel like every year there's a couple of games that don't appear anywhere until Game of the Year, where they it's better than the sum of its parts. Like, it has no kind of individual parts to stand out, particular, like music wise, graphically, whatever, but it's not one of those games. It's not meant to do that. It's just meant to be a decent version of, like, those simulation theme park hospital style games from yesteryear. And it's a solid version of that. Personally, I played about 2 or 3 hours of it, maybe a little bit more, and then I kind of felt like, all right, I've got everything I want out of this. And I was ready to bounce on to the next thing. But I enjoy 2 Point Hospital, and I think 2 Point Campus is a very solid version of that game. And if they do another thing like that in a couple of years' time and it's on Game Pass again, I'll probably sink a couple of hours into that as well. So, but I don't think it marches anywhere close to our top 3.
I appreciate the difference to 2 Point Hospital, where 2 Point Hospital is, person comes in with a problem, you solve the problem, they leave. As opposed to this is you're actually running a college, so the students have long-term, not narrative arcs, but you see the students progress over time, as opposed to just one-off patients coming in. I think that's a neat little touch.
It's the one thing I wish the game had dived more into, and obviously it's a very difficult thing to do when you're dealing with tens to hundreds of students, but the game does feel like it's trying to present this your students do have their character arcs and they do have their individual personalities, but it didn't do enough of that for me. Now, I don't know whether it's a thing of later on that you feel that does start to happen, but certainly for those first couple of hours, there's the potential for it to do that, but it didn't strike that chord as well as it could have. But that's a good point you make, Garrett, that I'd forgotten about. So
you can you can pick your favorites and you can follow people around, and you can add them. So you're always kind of keeping track of what they're doing. But I think the closer you get into individualizing the experience, the more you might as well just be playing The Sims at that point. So I think with 2 Point, what's cool is you build towards improving grades and grade averages of your students, and by developing facilities and professors. And it's really cool to libraries, anywhere for them to study. It's cool to see those improvements gradually bringing like the average up. To me, there's like nothing more satisfying than like seeing a metric in a game just improve and get better gradually over time. It's that sort of going right back to playing Championship and Football Manager, you know, getting a player with high potential and then just seeing them gradually improve season in and season out. And it's very like, it's a similar feeling to that, but in a sort of sillier format in 2 Point Campus and less spreadsheet based and more kind of graphical and fun. It's a really accessible game for anybody that likes management sims, and I would highly recommend it. And Game Pass, you know, get on it.
Mark.
Look, this game was a big, wonderful, warm hug, and I loved it from beginning to end. But I don't think Kirby is a top 3. Let's be realistic about this.
I was going to defend it, but it didn't make my top 10, so I can't really defend it on merit.
Love it when that happens.
It's a really cool, fun, nice, pleasant game. I think it has a rocking ending, great music. Doesn't outstay its welcome, which some games like this can. This game is like 6 to 8 hours long. It's perfect. But yeah, it doesn't hang ultimately.
It also, I think it has that wonderful thing a lot of Nintendo first party games have, where it is very accessible in terms of you can be a player of any experience level and get to the end of that game. But there is enough of the kind of like, oh, here's some extra stuff you can do. Here's some extra stuff you can collect. That actually, the first while I was playing that game, I was collecting everything quite easily. And then as you get deeper into the game, those kind of extra bits become further and further from your grasp, require more and more challenge. So I think it's really good in that accessibility way for people of all ages, but also in terms of like for people like us that might want to just critical path our way through it, like just beat it to see what it has to offer. By making the extra stuff quite easy early on, it makes you go, oh fuck, I finally missed one for the first time on my first playthrough. I go play that thing again, and it becomes moreish to try and like 100% those levels. So
it also, like, because one of the big things you could say, one of the kind of the big critiques you would have of a lot of first party Nintendo games this year, or even just like big marquee games that came out on the Switch this year, is a lot of them suffered from some form like visual or graphical issues. And Kirby is
Kirby a little bit,
but nowhere near to the same degree that like your Pokemons and like off the top of my head, at least I don't remember. Off the top of my head, I don't remember them as apparent as like your Bayonettas and your Pokemons and whatnot. And I think that just
I don't know. We could debate that. I don't know. There is some in Kirby, and they're pretty in front of your face.
Really,
not as much. Obviously, it wasn't as much of a headline grabber, you know, as Pokemon, but that's also because that's Pokemon and it's the biggest thing in the world.
Kirby is on average a better looking game too.
It is on. It is a better. Yeah, that's probably it too. Is kind of like, okay, it has its pretty significant issues, but it also has a much nicer, broader art style. To me, that's kind of why. I mean, obviously, it can easily go here, and I want to finish. I haven't yet finished it, but it's kind of like that's kind of my big problem with Kirby is that, like, okay, it's a really kind of just pleasant vibe game, great music, great art style, relaxing gameplay, satisfying gameplay. But if you're going to be an entirely vibe-based game and you have those graphical hang-ups, that just really sucks, because it's kind of like, you know what I mean? I'm there for that visual package.
But it does have mouthful mode, so you know.
I was going to say mouthful
it does. You know,
if there was going to be a gimmick of the year category,
mechanic of the year
mode is high.
Yeah. Also, Barry, when you play the finale of Kirby, I think it might notch it up a point in terms of your rating for it, because
very good.
It goes from a very nice vibe game to a sort of insane hellscape of everything exploding and molten lava.
It goes anime.
Yeah, it goes full anime, and you ultimately, you know, defeating the final boss and slamming a truck with full mode, like full pelt into them to a massive explosion in the sky.
I'll try and find a reason to justify bringing it on for like Game of Not 2023 next year. Maybe they'll do a Switch 2 version of it or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other word for it. The end of Kirby is fucking metal. It is metal as fuck.
Yeah.
It gets really cool. Mouthful mode is great. It's one of my favorite mechanics of the year. Is it similar to Cappy from Mario Odyssey? Yeah, a little bit, but seeing the car driving around with
more
a big
visceral about it. Yeah,
big dumb Kirby head on it is just so much more fun than like Mario possessing like a person, or I know you can possess like little objects, but yeah, just I love seeing Kirby shuffling around as a big stair set with its stupid expression on its face. It never fails to delight me. Like Dave says, they just with the mouthful mode and unlocking the puzzles, it's so easy at first, but then you kind of develop more and more ways to use it to find little bits and levels and unlocks, and it does definitely reward exploration, but not in a horrifyingly like annoying way of like having to actually end up looking things up. Like you can pretty much figure it out. It is a kid's game after all. I got the same.
Yeah, that is always something to remember with Kirby. It is the entry level video game. Like
it's like Kirby and Yoshi.
That's what it's designed to be.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Right.
Yeah, and like I did want to shout the transformations, where all the Kirby power ups, where you can level them up basically, and they become insane. Like some of the like the degree to which they become powerful is ridiculous. It's so much fun to just massacre things.
The final of the bomb hat just gets insane. Like
is that like the chaining the bombs together?
Yeah. Where you can just shoot out like 6-7 bombs across like and just take out like 5 enemies on the screen all once. Yeah,
they're chained really together into like one giant explosion, or the fucking humongous sword Kirby can get by the end.
The gigantic sword. They are really cool. Like an interesting little bit of progression, but it does like a kid's first game because it sort of introduces you to skill trees, it introduces you to puzzling, it introduces you to platforming. It is just an intro to all those mechanics. Those mechanics are probably all done more satisfyingly and more artfully in other areas, but Kirby is such a solid all-round really fun great game. I spent like 8-10 hours with it, loved all the time I spent with it, and it will stay with me. I think I had it 4th in my top 10 games of the year, just because of how it made me feel really to play it and how happy it made me. And that's usually kind of metric as to what I like from a video game, is to just give me some joy, and Kirby definitely gave me plenty of that. I think again it's gonna be very difficult to argue it to be into the top 3 of these games, so yeah, happy to let it go. But
it's wild to say that Kirby had a better, more impactful and effective skill tree in its game than say a fucking God of War Ragnarok, but here we are.
I think that goes back to it just being simple. It's like you have a sword that's one size and now you have a fucking huge one. that's satisfying. That's fun. When you unlock that bigger sword, you could like just more
sword. It's a stunning concept, but it's like there's actual visual feedback to like
it's not just your sword does 25% more damage and you don't feel that, or you do 24.6% extra instead of 28. It's like, no, you have a bigger sword and it kills things. That's all you need in video games,
and it looks cooler.
It does look cooler.
Yeah, that's the main thing for me, is that I do think, aside from the sort of dodgy draw distance like slowdown, which just seems to be in all Nintendo games, like obviously it was really bad. And
that's the thing I remember now. Yes, I remember from the demo, and me and Garrett were bitching about that.
It's the enemy animations from a distance. It's the same thing in Legends Arceus. It's the same thing in Pokemon. It's the same thing in Bayonetta.
Every game
and
seems to have it.
Like the Switch, like the people are like, oh, the Switch is 5 years old. It's not. It's about 10 years old. It's power-wise between the PS3 and the PS4, which tells you just how old that thing is. So they're I think working miracles in a way, but those poor people are drastically restrained by that hardware at this stage.
Yeah. I think even if that wasn't an issue, though, I can't see it getting into the.
Even if those enemy animations were fluid as hell, it does, because it doesn't make a lick of difference to the gameplay. They do animate pretty well by the time you get in front of them. It's only when you're about 10 feet away that they're like boop 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 boop.
There were so many great games on Switch this year, and this was definitely one of them. So it deserves a big shout out here.
I'm next. I think I'm gonna go for one of the big boys. God of War.
You beat me to it. Can I just say that
I have since our night 2 of recording, this is our 3rd session, I have put 10-15 hours more into God of War. That game's a fucking slog. Jesus Christ. Everything would be twice as good at half the time in that game.
I didn't put as many in as Dave, but similarly, since we last spoke, I was like, all right, come on, let's sit down. Fucking Jack gave it the hard sell, and I didn't hate it or anything. I'm like, he gave it the hard sell. I liked my time with it. I only put about 2 more hours into it. God damn. Can everyone in that game shut the fuck up? God fuck. Brother, you're on fire. This is a dead end, Dad. We can't go here. The solution to the puzzle is this, brother. By the way.
I was given out about like them doing it a couple of times early in the game, but it happens every time you come to the end of like a chapter of the main story. They're like, hey, Kratos, if you want to, like, this is the next thing you can do in the video game. It's like, hey, you could go this way. We're going to Midgard next. Or, hey, why don't you, sit around for a while? Mimir's like, there's probably, like, there was literally one line Mimir has when I'm leaving. I think I'm leaving Jotunheim or I can't remember. No, it's when I'm leaving Midgard and going back somewhere else that I played this part a day or two ago. And it was just like, even Mimir was sick of saying variations of this line where he just goes, I'm sure there's some loose end here to tie up before you go. And I was like, oh my God, video game. You've actually used all the words and run out
every
of them.
word under the sun. Because it's funny, because I think it is a trick that's sort of like, I think maybe 360 era game common, which is if you can have a little dialogue line trigger for, oh, there's nothing this way, or oh, you've done this already. Those, having the game recognize that you've reached the end, that kind of thing was novel. But they've put it, there is a line of dialogue for every conceivable circumstance.
Yes,
you need to dodge left, you need to dodge right, you're on fire, you're on ice, they're coming at you from this. I'm like, dude, stop, let me play the fucking game. And then on top of that is kind of like the actual, I think the actual playing of it is just not as satisfying. I did the thing where I got to the conclusion of I freed Tyr, right? That's like first act spoilers or whatever. I freed Tyr, and then you're walking back to the boat. And I've already done like an hour of bobbing and weaving through tunnels into the combat arenas. You're on fire, brother. I've done that for an hour. And then we, like, just before you get into the boat to trigger that big cutscene, which is actually kind of cool, they just spawn like 5 of those lizard enemies to fight you. I'm like, what? Come on, just let me get to the boat. I just want to go.
Combat
and it's like they don't look good. They're not even fun to fight. There's nothing meaningful about the fight. It's just do it to pad it because it's a AAA game. It has to be X hours long. I was like,
also,
but
just once again, just to say that fucking yak section, but so close to quitting at that point.
But Mark, there are 3 to 4 variations on the yak thing.
I know, because the yak is like the first egregious one, and
there's like bits with wolves. There's there are multiple parts of this game.
Section. Because the thing is, like the wolf section, you kind of think like, oh, the game really is opening up now, where I can go and I can explore and really get a sense of the Lake of Nine, or whatever the fuck it's called, and just really be left to my own devices. But there's really only like 3 things. Well, there are like 3 specific points you need to go to, and everywhere else there's fuck all there to explore. So it's like you've presented this kind of like sandboxy open world, or you really can go and do whatever you want now, but it's like there's actually fuck all to do other than the critical path.
I think the most disappointing thing to me, apart from like the more I play it, the more I get like what Barry is saying, where like it just feels like instead of thinking through different bits of combat and why they're happening and the challenge that can be placed therein, it's just like, no, we need to throw another battle arena in here, like in between 2 connective bits of story, instead of just having like 1 bit of combat or 1 area of combat. Now it's just like fucking 3 with a mini boss, just fucking because. As well as that, I think I get more frustrated with the constant loop that happens in the early hours of the game that proceeds through the middle and into the I'm entering the kind of last phase of the game now, which is that you have so many periods where something happens and you're like, okay, let's fucking go. Here's a cool thing. And then it just fucking slows right the fuck down again, and it does that shit again where everybody is fucking constantly fucking like this. And again, like we had said earlier in Best Story, sometimes it's useful and interesting stuff, but it is lost in the fucking mire of this game is making my brain tune out because so much of it is completely useless. There are like some really, really cool moments in it that I think maybe might have featured in my moment of the year nomination list, but moments do not a game this size make. Like when the connective tissue between individual cool moments is fucking dull, monotonous filler. I can't in good conscience put this anywhere near my list. Like even there's a great bit where well, it starts as a great bit where they are, again, we're a spoiler territory here. They are building you up, like you are gradually getting more and more control of Atreus, and there is a bit where Kratos accuses him of going to Asgard, and he hasn't yet, but essentially this puts the idea in his head to go to Asgard. And there's some talk in a Kratos section later on about how sometimes trying to avert fate seals your fate, because, like, you know, you tried to stop him from going to Asgard, but that's what made him go to Asgard. And there's
that's
a
what
whole...
we call the "That's So Raven" principle, by
yes.
the way. She never worked that out in that show, that
Indeed.
Every time her interventions would cause the future she saw.
Yes, indeed. There is a great like bit where you control Atreus and you're like, okay, I'm making the trek now to Asgard, and it's cool. There's a great, like, it's dramatic. It kind of reminds me of, the climbing wasn't as fun and as intuitive as the climbing in Rise of the Tomb Raider, but it was reminiscent of that, where like he's climbing up this big cliff face, this wall that was built by the giants to protect Asgard. And you're climbing it, and it's building. There's a sense of scale. There's multiple fucking annoying ass enemies. The wall is like exclusively populated by the 2 or 3 most annoying enemy types in the game. And then you get all the way to the top, and there's the reveal of Asgard, and you talk to this guy for a little while, and it turns out he's Heimdall. And then you go to kind of like where you go to Odin's gaff. And this is the first time you've seen Odin properly since, you know, earlier on in the game. And you could get like, it would be great to get like a 5-minute cutscene of some exposition and stuff like that. But what you end up doing, and again, if this was much shorter, it'd be much cooler. You end up getting a whistle stop tour around Asgard, where you're just fucking walking around between people doing their chores around the town. And maybe that's a cool idea for a couple of minutes, but then it goes on for a couple more minutes. Then it goes on for a couple more minutes after that. And that is the single greatest sin of this game, is excess in writing, excess in like the amount of everything. They just wanted the most of everything into this game, and what it does is it dilutes the stuff that's actually good.
This is the
more
most
Jack has sunk
AAA
further and
ever.
further into his chair. This conversation.
Sorry, buddy.
Well, I mean, like,
I do feel bad saying this.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like every game getting cut so far are games that I like as well. So I'm gonna be saying absolutely shit all in the back half of this podcast. I like the Tour of Asgard. I like most of the stuff that you've already mentioned. Is the you know, stuff from Mir and that, like the dialogue sometimes a bit cloying? Yeah, it can be. Did it bother me that much? No, not really. I thought the story of the game was worth all of the, you know, bits and pieces, and I quite liked exploring and doing the puzzles. And I didn't mind being told at the end of a section if there was like, oh, you can hang about and do some other stuff. It was a cool way of letting me know that there was still some other stuff that I could do, because I don't like to miss things. And it's why it takes me like so long to play a lot of games, because I like to try and do everything in the game.
One of the things that chats my ass about that is that stuff to me should be self-evident by the fact that all those dots are still on your map, and the fact that there's already a text thing when you finish the chapter. Already a text thing will show up for the next chapter going, either proceed to this checkpoint to Midgard or stick around. You know, it already says it twice to you through the UI of the game without Mimir or Freya or whoever else is fucking chilling with you to say that. There's also a really annoying one of those sections with Thor as well. Jesus fucking Christ. Like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm out. I'm gonna fucking womp people with Thor. And oh, fucking hell. Fucking hell. Anyway, sorry.
I like the game.
I just get fired up the more I'm going to finish it. I'm going to finish it.
I like the game. I'm on an island. That's fine. I don't think there is literally anything I could do aside from wiring you all money into your personal accounts right now to get this to stay on the list.
Which I'm totally open to.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm amenable to that.
On the table. I mean, so we're keeping God of War is what I'm hearing.
No.
Yeah. I think one of the things I think that maybe makes me so mad at it is that, like, it's not, I totally get, and it's the, you know, it's you and me have had this conversation about certain games over the years, Jack. Like, it's the Far Cry thing. Do you know what I mean? Like it scratches
That's why
that
I like
itch for
it so
you.
much.
Yeah.
It's like a Far Cry mixed with God of War. Of course I like that.
Scratches an itch for you in a way it absolutely doesn't for me. And it's like it doesn't have a patch on the old game. And the thing that I think riles me up more than any of that, because like I didn't get this riled up about Far Cry or anything like this when you would have nominated them in years past. I suppose the thing that I can't, it feels like Mugatu, I'm taking crazy pills here, that like there were places throwing 10s at this thing. Like, and like, even
that was bizarre.
Yeah, even if you're a high, exactly, Jack, even if you're a high man on it, it's not a fucking 10. Like there
it's
is
not a 10.
Yeah, it's nowhere near a 10.
I'm giving it like an 8.5, maybe. Like I found it like a really fun, enjoyable video game. I thought the story was sort of like 9 out of 10. I love the story of the game. I loved Atreus's arc. I know that Mark, like I know you said you didn't really vibe with that.
I'm actually fine with the story part of the Atreus thing. It's just I think the seams of that loop of we're just constantly going through small battlefields thing, I think that shows up even more because he's less fun to play as than Kratos.
The cool thing about this game, right, is 2018 God of War is they made the game and then he put a story around it. With this one, they made the story and then put the game around it, and that was the cardinal sin. And
then they put some more story around that.
And they put some more story and then some
more game around that again, apparently.
Yeah.
And as we've mentioned before, the Odin arc is really cool. He's a really good bad guy. And one of the better bad guys in recent memory in a video game.
I wish he was in the last one because he's really good.
Like that would have added it some serious sauce. But yeah, I hear it. I you're not the only ones to think this. I had other publications and people saying similar stuff. It's a matter of opinion. I'm not going to sit here and argue everything as a counterpoint. It would take way too much time. I will let God of War fall on its blades of chaos and get the fuck out of here.
Cool. Okay, Garrett.
The game I was going to take last time, it's still there background, Olli World. A game I didn't particularly. I know Barry and Mark like it. A game I really didn't particularly enjoy. I thought it was just kind of dull. But
I got kind of bored by it. But yeah. Yeah,
I thought how dare smoke is disappearing.
I'm right here. Okay. I love it, but I just thought that this particular version of it, I love that I can go and reach my physical evidence for
I do think this, like, most of the writing is completely throwaway, but I think the visual style, I think it pulls from that Adventure Time aesthetic wonderfully. And I wrote in my blog post about it that I always liked the Olli games, but I wouldn't say I was ever particularly in love with them because I found them too frustrating. And I find that Olli World does the kind of like, I don't know, I guess the Super Meat Boy thing for me, where I'm happy to do the one more attempt at that particular level, and the way that it gives you the checkpoints, and it's like, it doesn't punish you that you have to do the entire thing from the beginning again.
Right.
But there are
and if you fuck up as well, I feel like you press the button and you are straight back to that checkpoint. It is like you don't have to worry about jittering or loading. You press the button, you refresh your back to the checkpoint.
That is great.
That is the Meat Boy, Rayman Legends origin sort of thing, and it nails that. And the different objectives and how you can, if you want to get that perfect run, you can go back to the start, but you don't have to. You can just get through the stop at different checkpoints if you need to. The way that it gives you like the different alternative routes to go through, and the kind of more trickier routes, and how it really like tests your reflexes and your understanding of the mechanics of the game. I will say I did try to come back to it a couple of months later when the DLC came out, and I couldn't play the game again because it's one of those things where it's that kind of Metroid Dread where your hand is making very interesting shapes.
Oh, it's better than that. Come on.
I was gonna say, don't hurt Barry.
Well, I was giving something for Barry to understand what I was trying to get to. But
pandering is what we call it. Pandering.
Yeah,
you get in the zone, right, Mark? It's a bit like jumping back into Tony Hawk, and like you try and land like a 1 million point combo like in the first thing you do, and you don't have your sea legs under you at all. It's a very, you get like the physics of the game and the flow of it and how it feels, to me, are more satisfying than another game which is on here that I think based on its physics and its flow and the way it plays personally. But we can have that conversation a little bit later.
The one thing I wish the game did have more of, like, because there's a bit where you have a race down a ravine against a bear who's in like a rubber dinghy.
Yeah, in the rubber dinghy. Yeah.
And I wish the game did more little kind of random bits like that. Just those little things that, just bring a game from an 8 or a 9 to a 10 or whatever. But yeah, it's in my top 10. It wouldn't be in my top 3. I think they took that Olli core concepts and expanded upon it. I have very little complaints about the execution, because I got into that rhythm of I wanted one more attempt to this. I wanted to do better. I did get better. I felt myself getting better at the game in terms of my own skill set and what the game asked of me. But it's also like, I guess it's kind of similar to the sort of Nobody Saves the World, or even the Kirby, where it does everything that you want it to do, but there's only like a kind of peak of like the score, the feeling that you get about like how high you could rate it. And I think Olli World suffers from that as well, but I think it's as strong as it could be for what it is doing personally.
2 things: Gnarly Mike, great character. Also, a person called Gnarly Mike. Why would not want to do his challenges? He knows the shit. And somebody mentioned the aesthetic. I would describe the aesthetic as like punk pop Adventure Time. So like if you took Adventure Time and made it into like a sort of Blink-182 Sum 41 video, that's exactly what Olli World looks like. It's like, early 2000s punk rock skate culture meets an Adventure Time aesthetic, which I think is just really cool. It looked really nice, and actually even again played pretty well on the Switch, obviously because it's a side scroller, like, and I do love the way they incorporated a little bit of 3D, because it's only really ever been a 2D experience, hasn't it? But like you get to those like bowls and
it's got that kind of 2.5D sort of vibe to it.
Yeah, and I think the game looks really nice.
It does, absolutely.
It's a real nice step up on what they've previously done. Again, is it a sort of game? Has it got that same Powerwash Simulator thing that we mentioned, where this sort of game is only ever going to get this far because it isn't reinventing the wheel? It's just really nice, fun, subtle improvements on the previous formula in a game series that I already enjoyed. Yes. Is it the best Olli game so far? Absolutely. Is it going to be game of the year again? Probably not.
I can't wait for the next Olli to be like a Gravity Falls inspired style.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. I mean,
just go hog wild.
They just make Olli World X Tony Hawk, and like Activision sell the rights to Tony Hawk's Olli World, and just get a mashup of those two.
There you go.
Just give me that.
You said go hog wild, and my poisoned brain just started thinking of the next Olli World being set at Sturgis.
Oh God.
Jesus.
Malenko doing hill flips, whatever.
Yeah. So
main character Jay Leno.
Background to Barry.
Oh God, see, I was gonna do Olli World, and I feel like that was like the last easy one to cut. So I am drawing a blank. I guess Windjammers 2.
Yeah.
I obviously we chatted about it during multiplayer. A cool Windjammers sequel. I think they did it. They made another Windjammers, and it's great to see it. But
you do love to see it.
You truly do.
And Windjammers 2. ... They did it.
They did it. They could have absolutely said that, because it was one of those games. I think we hashed it out a lot during That was another one we discussed a lot during multiplayer. I just felt like, considering they did it, I was expecting a little bit more out of it. And I think that's the main reason I'm not into it. But it was really good. It was a really good one of those.
Yeah, there's not much really you can say about air hockey, is there?
No,
it's not air hockey.
It's not air hockey.
Frisbee.
It's air frisbee. Yeah,
come on.
We're jamming some hot discs, my friend. There's a difference.
The
world of difference. But I don't think it features in me and Mark's top 3. And we're the Windjammers guys.
Yeah, I think if I think just pure like gameplay, there's like 1 or 2 games, and this is one of them. If I just stripped everything else away and was like, just what is like
voice acting gone,
voice acting out the window, fucking take your story, fucking whatever. Just pure gameplay. Like Windjammers is up there.
Ones and zeros on the screen. That's all Mark wants.
Absolutely, literally.
I think Mark is just bringing out Pong next year.
Oh, yeah. You wait till you see my
Pong
game. I
2.
can tell you.
Mark did it.
Yeah, Pong Deluxe.
If they, oh my god, if there is a word of dialogue in that game, Mark, we are coming down on you like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what.
It'll all be just like
emojis.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
That's it.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so Windjammers is gone. Jack.
Yeah, I was probably going to cut Windjammers. Yeah. Okay. So just having a look on the list.
It's quite long still. There's still a lot on there.
There's still quite a lot of games on here, and then you're in the territory now where you're like, well, I'm probably gonna upset some people by cutting.
I feel it. I don't know what Jack's gonna go for. I can feel in my waters. This might be the round where there's a protest on a page.
Do we want to give a quick state of affairs?
Yeah.
Sure.
So remaining on the list, we have Elden Ring, Splatoon 3, Neon White, Tinykin, Vampire Survivors, Marvel Snap, Immortality, Live Alive, Signalis, Citizen Sleeper, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Norco, SiFu, Rollerdome, Pokemon Legends, Arceus, and Card Shark.
So 16 games.
Jesus.
Still quite a lot of games.
So we're an hour deep, boys.
Settle in.
Yeah. I think this is the phase. This is the phase where we start identifying the minority passion projects that just aren't going to get over the line into the top 3 because less than half of us have played it.
Except Jack's passion projects, because pretty much all of them
are
maybe one or two.
To be fair, everyone played it and hated it. So.
I know. I honestly,
this is where I could sit here in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and no one's played it. And it's like, I guess we have to take his word for it.
I started playing it. I like it.
Yeah,
I haven't played enough of it though.
And I as I promised you, Garrett, I bought it. I haven't played it yet, but I bought it. After I finish Slog of War, I'm getting to that one next, I think.
Oh God.
Just brutal.
Look, cut something Dave likes, Jack. Come on, get him back.
I don't know, because I think most of the games that Dave likes, I actually probably would say deserve to be on the list still.
Dang it.
Yeah. I feel like I'm gonna cut this, and I don't know, it might elicit some protests, but realistically, this ain't a top 3 game. It's a good numbers based card game, but Marvel Snap is
that's fair. I'd love to have a scrap about it, but it's kind of like I actually thought about cutting it first, to be honest, because I was kind of like
we also all came on the call earlier. And we're just like, God, I haven't played this thing in like a
right.
No, I'm playing this fucking thing every day.
But you came to it later than the rest of us, though. So
no, I was
last
to
it. I was last to it.
Oh, sorry, Dave was last. Sorry, Dave was last.
Mark has a mental illness with this game.
Oh, I have a deep sickness.
Well, we should cut it and stop enabling him then.
Yeah,
it is really cool.
I could make an argument
of
that
the
it's a top 3 game, but I'm not gonna.
Of the 5 of us on the call, if I were to go Marvel super fan, Mark Robinson would be.
But that's the thing
guess.
that I like about it. I like the fact that it doesn't have to be a Marvel adjacent thing for it to work. It helps in the fact that, you know, I mean, it could have used any characters, and I'd have established like, right, that character does that gimmick and whatever. It's just it obviously adds that presentation of like some very nice looking cards and all the shit, and there's so many different variants they have now of those cards, which I do appreciate as well. I guess it's my biggest surprise of the year.
Totally.
You know, like I when I think about it, I actually really do like those sort of deck builder games. I don't play that much of them because most of the time they're on PC, and I'm not going to sit at my PC and play a fucking deck building game. I like the
Dota
fact
2 guy
doesn't like Triple Triad, despite it's one of those games.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Get your fucking shuffle and boogie and get out of here.
Yeah.
But yeah, just Marvel Snap is just that perfect. Just get up, boot it up, play a couple of rounds, and off you go. And I feel like we've spoken about it elsewhere, and I've spoken about it on like previous podcasts, so I'm not going to waste too much time because depending on the pair of trousers I'm wearing that day, maybe I'd say it's in my top 3, but I think I had it at number 4. So yeah, if I just do simple math, then I'm not going to put up the fight. But it's great.
Trousers, bro.
I have my Marvel Snap trousers.
He keeps his phone. What he means is, if I could pull it out and play it right now, I'd be saying it's actually number 2.
Careful.
Oh, yeah.
Be very careful.
With his phone, his phone.
This is going on YouTube, Barry. You know, we can't be talking this kind of smut here.
Okay, we're sticking with you, Mark.
There's one I really want to go for, but I know I'm going to get pushed back. So I'm going to go for a different one that I don't think it will get pushed back, but I know I'm going to see some sad faces when I say it. And I think it's a game that kind of similar in vein to, I guess, like Olli World and Nobody Saves the World. I think this fits into that category. I was surprised to see certain people go and bat as high for it, because I thought it was a very decent game, but not more than that. And that was Tinykin.
I knew you were going there. No way. No way. Yeah.
Listen, I'm more on the Mark side than the Barry side, in that if we did have a very good game of the year category, it's right up there. It's such a good little game.
No flaws category. Come on.
No, we've already got such. Also.
It's such a pleasant, joyful little experience, and I'm kind of mad that Green Tinykin got cut from the best character, because that dude absolutely rocks. Like the little clickety clackety noise as you build your Green Tinykin ladders, absolutely tremendous. Riding around in your bar of soap, absolutely tremendous. Fantastic level design, and my favorite thing about the game, I said it when I talked about it the first time, it doesn't have combat. And if this game had combat, it would ruin it. This game would suck if it had combat, and it doesn't. And that was such a good choice. Yeah, but it's very, very good. It's not game of the year, but it deserves a firm shout out. It made my top 10.
I'm shocked Mark is cutting this, and Garrett. This is the gameplay fucking game of the year. What are you
no. All right. Look, the gameplay in this game is fine. You run around, you collect things, you build the little fuckers up.
It's more than fine.
But you like
those Green Tinykin.
Barry, all right. When you think of me and of gameplay, all right, you got Ghost Runner and Boomerang X and Windjammers, all right?
All worse than this so far. Okay,
Tinykin is not any of those games. It's
better.
A pleasant
better.
little.
Thank you, Garrett. I've turned Garrett onto my side.
It's better. Mark is pushing me the other way.
It's better than fucking Banjo. It's an updated Banjo-Kazooie, and it does it better than that, and I appreciate that.
Hey, now. We've had a phenomenal year for people talking themselves out of winning an argument.
I mean, it doesn't seem like it seems like I am the high man on it. I mean, what this is. So this is probably the first time this is in my top 3. This was my top 3. I mean,
no way.
Similar to Mark's pants comment, depending on what hoodie I'm wearing on a given day. It's either this or Citizen Sleeper are my dueling, number 3 or number 4. It is that pure distilled, like mainline straight into your veins video game. Do you know what I mean? It's a collectathon where I went and I got the full 1,000 gamer score on Xbox because I wanted to do everything in it, because the dopamine hit from all the collecting never stopped until I ran out of things to collect in that game. I licked my plate on that game. And even though I was saying it was the gameplay, I love the presentation of it. I think it's super cute. I love the little 2D paper character running around in a 3D world. It's like they said, let's take like Paper Mario, but put that aesthetic in like a good game that's fun to play, and they did that with Tinykin.
I'll tell you what, cut this fucking game now.
What did we just talk about pushing people to another direction?
I'm just
get this fucking
I'm doing
game off
the
this
Terminator
right now,
flicking everyone off as I sink into the lava with Tinykin. My copy of Tinykin nestled in my arms.
Come for Tinykin.
I will say, for as much as I love the Green Tinykin, the electric one, nah.
Yeah, I found trying to clean those fuckers together.
That was my one thing, and I didn't consider it enough of a grievance to diminish its 5-star beauty.
Also,
5-star rating.
But even like the bridge building one, which they give to you after they give you the much more satisfying Green Tinykin, which is like highlight of the game. The game could just beat Green Tinykin, and I'd be delighted. Yeah. But the bridge building one is also like, all right, I have to wait for these Tinykin to carry this carrot to this bridge so I can build the bridge for them, and like that's fine. Whereas the pure platforming of it, just fantastic. I love it so much.
Also, the ending really feels like we don't actually know how the fuck to end this thing, so just right there, done,
like a Python sketch, just fucking ends.
It kind of does for me.
But it's also like its story was like a cute little thing to move you through the story. It's not,
But even just like the pacing of it feels like it's leading up to some kind of big. And maybe it's a case of like, because of the lack of combat, it is a kind of like, well, how do you do an ending to a game like that? And that's a question that is there to be asked. but it does kind of feel
decided not to answer.
Yeah, it just kind of ends. It has this kind of short little thing, and
I mean, whatever. Okay, it's obviously not gonna make it. I loved it. I thought it was nigh on perfect. And I also just I love the shrunk down in a normal ass house aesthetic. That's always great.
It's better than It Takes Two.
Yes. Yeah. My girlfriend actually just asked me, can we go back to it? We never finished it because it's 7 million hours long, and I was like, we'll go back to it at some stage.
Right, I'm next, I think, because that was you, Mark, wasn't it? Yeah,
that was Mark.
So, right. Again, I'm going from that perspective that like I'm looking at things that the majority of us haven't played or aren't going to put in the top 3. So and there's one game that I want to afford someone the opportunity to take off themselves, so I won't go for that one. So I'm going to go for the other one in this category where I think only one person is hugely passionate about it, and I'm very sorry, Mark, but Card Shark.
I love Card Shark. I know it's not in the top 3. It's not my top 3. I think it's a thing that all of you. I know Garrett did these 15 minutes.
Yeah, like as I said, I only played it for like an hour, but it was like unlike a lot of games that I play for an hour, I'm like never again. Like I won't even name names. That'd be nice. I was gonna dunk on God of War again.
I was going to say he's definitely thinking Ragnarok.
But I played Card Shark, and I never did get back around to it, but at least once a month it would pop into my head. It's like, oh god, that game's cool. I have to get back to Card Shark.
That's the thing, because I think a lot of people, when they see it at the front, there's like Card Shark, it's a game about playing cards, and it's like that's not what the game is. It's about cheating at cards using these really interesting mechanics where, like, you're pouring a bottle of wine into someone who's playing the cards, he's glass, you're pouring the bottle of wine, and as you're doing that, you're looking over his shoulder to see his cards, to remember the cards that he has, to then go around the other side to then put like a deck of cards into your, like, the person you're with, and all these kind of little bits and pieces, and it gets really fucking intricate about the cheats. And I love that, like, every time you start a mission, you and Comte, your associate, you're in the carriage on the way there, and he's telling you, right, this is how we do the trick, and like the game presents you how to do this trick, and you get as many attempts to do it as you want, and there's this kind of like this very kind of cheeky little music playing in the background where you feel like you're devious and like, right, I'm being a little miscreant here, and I'm gonna like steal a bunch of money from these kind of rich aristocrats of the 17th century in France. And I just love everything. It's such an original concept, and both like story wise and mechanically.
I think like the closest thing is probably WarioWare, right?
I was thinking it's like an extremely anxiety-inducing WarioWare. It's really intense. Like I've died, and I got to the death cutscene that Mark outlined in another category, which is fantastic. I got like a bit of momentary dumbness, and I fucked up the very easy grift you can do on death, and I lost all my money, and at one point it threatened it'll delete your save if you keep trying to fuck with death, which I was like, all right, I'll just let them take all my money. It's the mini games remind me of WarioWare, but it's like way more intense because you've got meters popping off, they're suspicious of you, you're gonna get killed. It's like, yeah, I'm still playing it as we've been doing this, and it's really fun. It is really fun.
And it's like the thing, like where you're using, you got to flick your analog stick right, and that's going to cut the deck, and then you have to like fucking do like a 360 rotation to fucking like rotate the cards around. And it's super intricate, and it really demands like the game. It's not a thing where you can just kind of throw off the tutorial and be like, oh, I'll figure it out. Because no, you will fail, and you will fail over and over again. You have to do the tutorial, actually learn the fucking thing that you're being asked to do, and then reproduce it. But it's not that it's done in an environment where like the safety net is taken away, and it's like you can't fail this now. You got to fucking actually like land this. And I think the way that it introduces these techniques and asks you to do them, and just the entire setting, I think it's a wonderfully crafted game. But it's not a top 3, so I'm happy that it got to this point. I'm really looking forward to more of you playing it and talking about it, because I will talk about this game as the day is long, because I think it's just a really wonderfully original game in 2022. So, yeah.
Okay, Garrett.
I'm surprised I'm the one that's probably going to take this off, but at this stage, I think it's Pokemon Legends Arceus.
Yeah,
which is a game.
It was one of the ones I had in competition for taking this turn.
I'm just gonna turn
but it's a game I'm very fond of. It's a game I really enjoyed. It's a game that I think does a lot of really cool things. But at this stage, it's looking at this list, it is probably one to go for me.
I think the thing that maybe it makes me agree with you the most is that you have talked about it in less glowing terms than the Pokemon game that didn't make it onto this list.
Yeah, I honestly, I personally did prefer Scarlet and Violet. I think that was ultimately like a better realized open world Pokemon game. But this felt like a truly new Pokemon experience for the first time in a very, very, very long time. Like even like a Sword and Shield only dipped their toe in. They dipped their toe in a little more at the DLC. But this is like you go to these sandbox areas, you walk around, you catch Pokemon. They change some of the battle mechanics. Stuff like confusion and paralysis doesn't work the same way it does in the other games. So stuff like that keeps you on your toes. The kind of strong attack, weak attack system, which I don't think they really dived that deep in on, but it's an interesting idea that you can like meddle with. I think it's as I said, it's a new Pokemon experience. I love the idea of being like actively afraid of Pokemon in the world, that there is these just giant Pokemon who are out to fuck you up. You, not your Pokemon, out to like kill you as a person. Like when this game starts, they dump you out to the field and they're like, go out there and you might die. That's the tone of the Pokemon game. And like there's the big boss battles you do that are borderline like Dark Souls bosses. Those are pretty cool. And the final battle you do in like the post game is one of the hardest Pokemon battles. But at this stage, it does go for me, even though it is a game I'm very fond of.
Yeah, I mean it's my second favorite game of the year, so I wouldn't cut it. But I don't think I
think if Garrett is shanking you at this stage,
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Jack.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm on a completely different page than everyone else this year.
Well, that's the joys of Game of the Year. Sometimes not when you're on the losing side of it, but it's good that way, and that's why we have the ultimate contrarian, Garrett Kidney, on.
I don't know though. I feel like I just feel like you've added another person that seems to agree with you in a lot.
I don't know. When I tried to cut Scarlet and Violet in an earlier category,
we did come for his throat. We did try to kill him for that.
Yeah.
I think this is everything that Pokemon have been looking for years. A completely new, interesting take on what a Pokemon RPG game could be. The catching mechanic is a massive improvement. The Pokedex is all of a sudden, it went from just a thing that you catch like one Rattata and throw it in a box for it to sort of choke and die and completely ignore forever, to the more you catch, the better it kind of fills out your Pokedex, the more information you have on the
and
Pokemon.
The act of catching them feels really good, which I think is the important part.
Yeah, it does. It's satisfying. Using the jet ball to like nab something in the air from like a couple of 100 feet away is ridiculously satisfying. Shiny hunting is the best it's ever been in this game. It's so good. Like you'd be flying over a field and you just hear that ching, and it's like that little moment that somewhere there's a shiny Pokemon, so you kind of loop around and try and find it. And those are like some of my favorite moments of the year for the few shinies I caught. I absolutely loved the way that instead of just stuff in a box, you now have like a farm. You have a farm where your Pokemon live, and you can look over the fence and you can see them all hanging out. I can see like a Gengar just chilling, like just big and ugly and just chilling over there in the corner next to something.
That's my beautiful boy. Don't talk about him like that.
I wish they did more about being able to like sort the boxes. Like that was an absolute chaotic mess. Anytime you looked in there trying to find a Pokemon or sort them, or like they're like, oh, for certain side quests you need certain Pokemon. I'm like, oh, where is this thing? This giant box of unsorted Pokemon.
There is options to like click through and sort if you want. It's maybe not as intuitive if you kind of found it hard to do. So I can't knock your experience with that, but it's just a really, really, really good game. The only knocks on it, really, I just think of the way it kind of looks. But then, that's what we've mentioned with most Switch games and the sort of draw distance and the purple rocks or whatever. But that didn't
shout out to the skyboxes. look
the
great.
skyboxes look amazing. The music,
the two things I'll mention every time: skyboxes and movement. Because I still think there's no better open world movement than this game. It's so crazy that because again, similar to Tunic, I captured a little bit of gameplay of it, and it's like, oh, you can just jump into the water and immediately switches to your water Pokemon, and then you can press a button and you'll shoot off into your braviary, and all of that happens instantly. And when you play all of these other open world games that are just so slow and they don't let you go anywhere, and it's like this hip high rock is what's keeping you from that area over there, and you're like, well, whereas this game is just fly anywhere, who gives a shit.
The climbing is really satisfying as well. Like you go from, like you say, massive rocks or whatever, or mountains blocking your way, to everything in the game is traversable. You can get pretty much anywhere you need to get with all of your ride Pokemon, and it's awesome.
I just want to make the counterpoint to the traversal thing, where I am in agreement in terms of the traversal is great, but I would make the counterpoint that large parts of the environment to actually traverse upon are not particularly interesting.
That's a world design. That's not a movement thing.
No, but that's what I mean. But the movement itself is great.
They're hand in hand, aren't they? When you think about it,
the things you are moving around to see are not particularly interesting.
The things
you can climb that rock like a madman.
Yeah, true.
But I think it'd be cool to again, this seems like the thing that people are really hopeful they'll build upon.
It's the thing with Arceus. It's a great first proof of concept. Like I will never argue in terms of like, hey, they finally, a little bit too fucking late, but we got her eventually. They went and they did something different with Pokemon, and they did a very interesting thing with it. I would argue that it doesn't stick the landing. I think that after a good 3 or 4 hours, you've kind of seen what that game has to offer outside of the boss battles and like the end part of the game. But I certainly for like the like last 3 environments, I kind of felt like I'm doing a variation of a thing that I've already done, and I'm getting less and less interested, other than it's just easier to get around the world now, which thumbs up. I would like in a sequel they do more stuff around, because for me, I think the part of the game that I enjoyed the most was when I had a Pokemon that was fucking after my tail, like just after me, and I was having to escape it. I'd like it to the next game to do more stuff around how Pokemon chase after you and how you can escape them, whether it's climb up trees or whatever the case may be. More stuff around that. I think I guess, and if you want to add kind of more like a survival element to it, that's the kind of stuff I hope that we do get, because I feel like it's just oh look, that Pokemon has red eyes, so I'm just going to run in the opposite direction until I'm safe and then carry on. It's like there's a great proof of concept there to expand upon, and maybe there is a game of the year version of this in there, but I don't think this is it.
Yeah, I love the alpha Pokemon metric with the, or as you would say, to the red eye Pokemon. I thought it was really cool. Again, there's another thing that they added into the game that they hadn't really done before. There's no differentiation in many games apart from like leveling and when you kind of dig into the stats, or if it happened to be shiny in the previous games. But here, like you're taking on, the idea of like there's a bunch of small Pokemon hanging around like this big alpha Pokemon, and you can go and take it down. I think catching the legendary Pokemon at the end of the game, the legendary Pokemon felt properly threatening and creepy. Some of the environments that you had to catch them in, like Darkrai just appearing behind you and stuff like that, really cool.
I think one of my bigger disappointments with the game is that the story ultimately just became a retreat of the Gen 4 story. It's like, oh, you go to the lakes and you kind of fight the Pokemon and then you unlock the... It's like, all right, you didn't have to do the same thing. I know it's a Gen 4 origin story, but you didn't have to do the story in the end.
I kind of like that. I think it's a nice callback to anyone that had experience with the Gen 4 game.
See, the callbacks I liked were like when you were in an area that they didn't call Eterna Forest, but they played like a remix of the Eterna Forest theme, and you worked out organically. It's like, this is like that part of the game. I much prefer that as opposed to like we literally just do the story again.
Yeah, there's a line between homage and we just throw it down again, shall we? Yeah, I know what you mean.
I think it deserves to go like deeper in this category. I think there's probably 5 or 6 games on here that I think I had more fun, or I think it's probably better than.
There are 2 others I thought about cutting. One is the exact same rationale as when we were talking about best storytelling, I think, which is I think the passion behind Citizen Sleeper is much stronger than the passion behind Norco. And so Norco might be the one to go, and the other was Rollerdome. So if anyone wants to cut one of those,
and save Jack's tears.
Well, no,
for like 2 more rounds.
Yeah, for like a round or two. Like there's kind of no point because I don't think I can get this into the top 3.
Someone else has taken it out.
As the Pokemon agnostic, like I think Jack and even Garrett, as he's cutting it, his cases are compelling. But there seems to first of all, Garrett seemed positive on it, but is cutting it, and the other Pokemon players seem nonplussed on it, or you know what I mean.
Yeah, I didn't spend too much time on it myself.
I would be happy for it to stay, but the people who have played it seem, do you know what I mean? I'm happy for it to stay, but if that's just, is that keeping it for a turn?
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be a victim to me of like I did prefer Scarlet and Violet, like ultimately. So like if there was just one Pokemon game this year, I might fight harder.
This is classic Observer Hall of Fame, 2 guys splitting the votes in the category moment here.
And it is a game I really do enjoy, but like next to the rest of the games, I know people feel much stronger about the rest of the games than I feel personally about Legends Arceus. And if we did save it, we would probably be saving it for like 2 or 3 rounds tops, wouldn't we?
Okay.
Yeah, it's never getting in the top 3, which
All right.
Something that Garrett actually just mentioned there. I think Rollerdome has kind of snuck on this bar.
Yeah,
I think we've all assumed for a couple of turns that someone was going to do it.
I thought somebody felt much strong. At least somebody felt stronger about Rollerdome.
I fucking love Rollerdome. This is maybe a top 5, maybe.
I wish, like, my big problem with this game is
the overall game just got cut, Mark. Get your top 5.
Top 5.
I'm not saying it stays at all.
Yeah, my big problem with this game is like I wish it was these mechanics in a SuperHot game as opposed to these mechanics in a Tony Hawk game. Because like I just didn't really find doing these tasks and then like, just Tony Hawkifying it. I didn't find that interesting. And whereas if they put these mechanics in like interesting levels, I think this game would be like top tier.
As someone who loves a wacky extreme sports game and a fucking goofy Max Payne-y slow motion divey game, this game is like a wonderful PS2 genre game amalgamation of things, and befittingly it kind of doesn't quite stick it in a way that landed for me. It also does that kind of thing where it's kind of we actually, me and Mark, I think we were talking about this when I was streaming it, which was they made the very clever call to not have bales be a thing in this game, right? Because that would just put the game into unplayable territory there if that was one. So they got that right, but they still do the thing that I just generally dislike in any kind of just like combat game, which is the deeper you get into the game, the more like inscrutable the screen becomes because there's a flamethrower enemy, an ice beam enemy. It's like all right, there's 10 bajillion things going on, and I feel like the satisfaction factor of the first half of the game is diminished a little bit. And I know it's got to get tougher. You know what I mean? But I felt like I felt like the later levels are kind of just they're throwing stuff at the wall.
That's where the sicko in me comes out. And but I will say this. Because like that, there's a power creep kind of thing where you talk about that that Rollerdome does, and like Boomerang X does. And the one thing I will say in Boomerang X's favor is that with Rollerdome, like the gimmick is that in order to recharge your ammo, you need to do tricks, basically. The problem is most of your guns, like you have an itchy trigger finger because obviously everything's on the screen and everything needs blowing up. But where they get the momentum right in terms of making it that you can't bail, there are times where the momentum is lost because you spend so much time having to like do tricks to get your ammo back up for then these short periods of time when you can actually use that ammo to fire whatever's in the screen. And there certainly are times where that momentum does feel kind of like not as fluid as it could be in a way where like a Boomerang X is just a constant fucking you're over there now you're over there, now you're over there, now you're over there. And Boomerang X sometimes admittedly does suffer from that, where it's a clever idea in a way that instead of just making you run around the environment having to pick up like ammo that constantly spawns at certain points, it does it in a way where you have the full control over, and you have the option like, right, do I want to fire these last couple of bullets, or do I want to charge up, then use like the additional ammo that I have now for my grenade launcher to take out that guy over there first before that guy? I think that there's a real like Doom chess approach to it. It's not as dynamic as like a Doom, like modern Doom, but I think that, but it can get frustrating. So
a lot, yeah.
a lot of fucking going on.
One of the minor kind of thing that bothered me as well is that they've got like the 3 level types, the snowy mountain location where there's usually a gap in the middle of the mall, and the like X Games arena effectively, and they've like, and so you know the game has a really cool art style, and it's got this dystopian future, and it's got this cool premise, and the levels are cool, but it's kind of like, could you have thrown maybe one more palette onto those levels? Because I just kind of feel like the second time you get a mall, you go, wait, this is another mall level.
It needed a downhill jam.
It needed a downhill jam, or it needed a skate heaven. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Or in this case, like a skate hell. Like maybe you die halfway through the story, and you got to fight your way out, like God of War 1. That'd be awesome. But yeah, Rollerdome, really cool. I think it sort of snuck up this high on this God bless it and all that. Don't get me wrong. I will finish. I haven't finished it yet. Been playing that on the old deck, and it is a blast for sure.
Okay. Next we come to, who's next? Jack, yes, that's right. It was just you, Barry. So Jack.
I just want to spark this reaction. I would cut Neon White here.
That's not happening, I don't think.
I mean, like I have no strong feelings about Neon White. Not only because like the story stuff is dire, and you might say ignore it.
Yeah, it is.
You can't just say don't pay attention to the bad thing in the game. It's really bad.
No, it's bad.
It's bad on a level like worse than I think anything else I played this year.
But it also fits into the same thing we were just saying in Rollerdome, is that it's a cool mechanic and a cool gimmick, and that is the whole game.
Yeah, but the gameplay is so much fucking more.
I actually think it's kind of like not that, because it's at the end of the day, it's just a first-person shooter with platforming, because it's like.
But it's not even a first-person shooter. It's more. It's like more of a kind of speedrunny mirror's edge.
More of a mirror's edgy. Yeah.
But my point is that it's not like I would consider Rollerdome a gimmick because it's a shooter with roller skates on your feet, like that. That's gimmicky. I would consider the appeal of Neon White to be a lot more core. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
and also like the big
and the level design.
It's just cards and shit, man. That's not that.
But the big thing there, like the big thing about Rollerdome,
Jack is just like all his shit is gone. He's burning bridges. He doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah. This is actually how I feel. I played Neon White and I was like, this is fine. I watch other people playing it and they look like they're having fun. Good.
I think I say it's like I understand the appeal, but also I don't care.
I
ultimately like ran out of interest in the mechanics.
The big thing about Rollerdome that Barry makes a point of there that I agree is that the level design is left wanting, whereas the level design across the fucking board in Neon White is so creative, and you could play a fucking level like 25 times and find about 12 different ways to get through the level. And you think that I've nailed this time, and then in 3 runs time you figured out this little shortcut here that was put there by design, where you've just kind of hacked 12 seconds off your time.
Or you log on and Niners beating your time. You're like, motherfucker.
Well,
not letting this.
Well.
I'm super conflicted on Neon White, because the funny thing is, like I like, much like the kind of music thing, I'm having this visceral reaction where I want to defend it, but I never really expected it to win. But also I don't want it, because it's a fucking complicated kind of mess of a game. Because the story stuff, I remember saying to you guys early on when I was playing that game that I didn't think the story stuff was as bad as everyone was making out. Well, I'll take that back now and say that I was wrong.
Bad.
Because not only is it bad, but fucking hell, there's so much of it. God fucking damn, there's
so
intrusive.
Like it's literally you can skip it, but it's so hard to I just want to play your levels. Just let me play your levels, you stupid game.
You can't even skip it. You have to fast forward it. That's the thing.
I spend more time holding down the fast forward dialogue button than I spend on any individual level in that game.
Like I hate skipping and fast forwarding stuff. I kind of even if it's shitty, it's kind of like, well, I want to endure it because this is the fucking game and I want to fucking just see what it is. I was hammering that button by the end, man. It's so intrusive. And also, like, so many of it actually does impede the game itself because so many, like, the level design is not only fantastic for your initial playthrough, but obviously you've tons of incentive to revisit it, right? To get the gifts and stuff like that. But the thing I kind of realized, especially as I was trying to finish the game in the run up to this, the thing I kind of realized was like my desire to replay it has plummeted through the floor because the gifts, all they do is they get you more fucking dialogue with the shitty characters, and likewise the golden tickets. I like when I was like trying to finish it before this, I realized, okay, stop cashing those in because you're not going to get a pleasant surprise. It's always going to be, oh, you get to go to the cinema with one of these wankers.
Were you still getting those for longer than you'd like to admit you were?
I was, and I'll tell you why, because there's like cool. So the side quests you get from the characters, those are cool.
Yes.
Like those are kind of like, they kind of like and different characters have different one. And I think reds are the ones where they're like pushing the limits of what an individual card does, right? So you just get like the pistol, right? So it's an entirely double jumping. Those are fantastic, but you get those for, say, every 4 gifts you bring red. Every other gift you bring her, you just get, oh, white. It doesn't just remind you. Oh my God, shut the fuck. You can't read. This can't really be what I'm getting these gifts for. This exhilarating, awesome experience of revisiting these fantastically designed levels, and all you get out of it is the most. And this is the same writer as what? Donut County.
Yeah,
which is like
the most minimalist game imaginable. Yeah,
but it's super charming and funny and adorable.
I just blasted through Donut County a couple of weeks ago just because it's like 2 hours long. Every single line in that game is either funny or whimsical or has that.
You want to read every Trashopedia.
You want to read every single, and that's the thing. As I'm reading through these Trashopedias, I'm like, it's the same fucker we did Neon White. I don't understand. And again, I bring it back.
Somebody watch anime in between the two games.
Just super high patch video, and all of a sudden,
you got Spike Spiegel, you got fucking Cowboy Bebop, and you put him in a game where I don't want to listen to him. Like that is a cardinal sin that I have had to wrestle with when it comes to how I rate this fucking thing.
There's we've talked about how bad it is, but it's also, as well as just already being bad, I think I've said this before in an earlier category. It's unnecessarily horny.
It is.
Yeah,
it's like the badness is one level, but also the unnecessary anime horniness of it all also makes me less likely to recommend this game to someone else.
They totally.
You're a sicko.
But on the flip side,
free playing.
On the flip side, it has rocket jumps, and they're really cool. And when you're fucking just slingshotting in very large environments between buildings, it's like the
rocket jump
thing.
Weapon also has a grapple hook when you discard it. It's so fucking cool.
If this many games on my list this year, it would be much more conflicted for me if it was
similar
just a game.
Similar to the Rollerdome point. If this game was just fucking super hot, man, we would not be. This may be winning if it was, but it's not.
Lads. How good was SuperHot though?
Super. There's a fucking video game. Let me tell you.
And SuperHot in VR, despite the fact that I nearly destroyed Dave's room playing it.
And face.
Yeah, and face.
He punched me in the face.
And about face.
I will also say all the energy was expended on a previous episode. That music cut, that is outrageous. I will put 5 of your chosen currency on the line that people on this call would use to say that will be one of the most controversial cuts in this series history.
I spent my flight to England and back stewing in my seat, just infuriated by the fact that thing got cut.
And the funny thing is, it's not even that it didn't win, because I went in expecting Xenoblade to win, and I was like, you know what, I don't even have a problem with that. It was Neon White getting cut so early.
From 2 of the clowns that voted Psychonauts 2 as best music last year. This is rich coming from the Paria.
Justified winner.
And
but anyway,
fuck off with your anime traversal bullshit. Get this out.
Okay.
But I would say,
let me just remind everyone: the only unanimous winner this year is Xenoblade Chronicles 3 in music. Just want to bring that up.
Much better music than Neon White.
I like Neon White's music. I won't be mean to Neon White.
So
except the parts of Neon White that are terrible, which there are many.
It sounds like Neon White has bit the dust.
I think. Are we, Barry? Are we gonna?
It's not a passion project for me. And like I said, generally speaking, I like to suffer through even a bad story game, I was skipping that. It's got to be pretty bad for me to be skipping it.
It's like it's the worst story against the best gameplay, and I don't know. I feel like I was able to use the skipping of the story to use that as a breather between the very intense gameplay section, so it kind of worked for me in that regards. I could put up a fight, but I do feel like I've got at least one or two other things in here that I'll fight for more.
If this was a SuperHot style minimalist experience, we'd be having a different conversation. If they made it so that, forget gifts getting you dialogue and all that shit, if every gift you got you one of the side quests, and it was a proper like Celeste style situation where the game was absolutely rammed up the arse with B-sides and bonus levels. I'd be fucking dying on the hill. We'd be here all fucking night because I'd be nearly making the case it would win. But that's not
every
what the
point
game
is. If this game did this thing better and that
it's of course
and had less of this and more.
But
of
the point, but the reason we're saying is
that is the
close. It's because it's so close.
Yeah,
it's like on the cusp of being what we want.
If Scarlet and Violet didn't look like shit, I'd be arguing for it to be in the top.
I mean, they still be Pokemon games. I mean, like I could do that. I can join Nintendo.
You're fighting with the wrong person here, Jack.
Here's my pitch for next year's game. It's a little monkey with a bit of sandpaper on his head. Is Sand Key. Well, you've done it again, Barry. Well, here's your big sack of cash.
The worst part, you're taking the piss, but that actually sounds pretty fucking good. I might have
I'm bored for this game. Barry, make a Pokemon game.
I would put 5 of your chosen currency down that within 2 generations that Pokemon exists.
This is where I announced that I'm also making a game next year.
You also have a Sand Castle Pokemon, so you're kind of 50% of the way there.
There we go.
God, imagine Barry makes the Pokemon killer game. Incredible.
A Mankey and a Sandcastle, we're gonna fuck and whatever we get out of it.
Gents, we are now at a final 10.
Blimey.
So that final 10 before we go to Mark is Elden Ring, Splatoon 3, SiFu, Vampire Survivors, Immortality, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Norco, Live Alive, Signalis, Citizen Sleeper.
Before we go to Mark, call it those top 3 and let's walk away, boys. Elden Ring, Splatoon 3, SiFu. I'm loving that.
We done?
I'm loving that.
Huh? We done? We out?
I have.
That's a pretty good list. Come on. I'm half joking here. But this is
half joking, but Barry's also going, ooh, early bed.
Look, Barry, it's my go, isn't it, right?
Yeah. It is your go.
Oh, damn it. I could have made a nice segue there, but I don't want to go for SiFu yet.
Please.
Right, here we go. Here we go. I feel like this is where we get into the spice. Well, I mean, we have to now. There's 10 left, so the spice has to really begin now. I'm just going to put it out there. I think everything about this game, other than its gameplay, I think is unbelievable. And I think is such a fascinating and interesting and just incredibly crafted experience. As an actual thing to play, I don't care for Immortality. I found it as a thing to play. I did not enjoy at all. And I realize that's the point. Yeah. And there's probably a little bit of it is I don't give a shit about David Lynch, but just going on a subjective basis, on perspective, Immortality would be my next pick.
I would gun to my head. Yeah, well, if you were like gun to my head, would I rather watch Immortality as a TV show than play it as a video game? I would say yes every single time.
Totally. And also there was the bit we talked about when we did story and stuff like that was we talked about the UI, and we also talked about the shared experience we all had, which is once you figure out the mechanic, you're then kind of sitting there robotically just kind of
skipping through the scenes, wanting to find the next moment.
And at that stage you kind of are just watching a let's play at that stage, like it isn't most gameplay award, but I do think that counts against it for sure.
It is game of the year.
That's right.
Game, capital G game.
That's right. Where's the fail state in this thing? There is none. Get it out of my sight.
I would definitely have it significantly higher, but I feel the temperature of the room here. I don't think this is going to be one of those years like where me and Barry stampeded through the barricades with Control to get it in second place. It's not going to be one of those years for Immortality. I think it's
everyone's list,
not mine.
It's not on yours
for me.
No.
Okay. I didn't put it in my game, but to me, like the story would have won for me on
story.
Just because I think it's just so brilliantly crafted.
I think it's phenomenal. I think it would be, we said it in a previous category and we've said it here. I think it would make a phenomenal miniseries / movie or anything like that. But I think something about the nature of the interactivity and having to be tactile and having to actually, it's you going out of your way to find these pieces and the context clues from the scenes about interesting things to click on and jump to other scenes, I think is lost if you move it to another medium. I think it would be great in another medium, but I think it's best in the medium it's already in.
I'm
like you said,
it's that first moment where it's like, oh, and then the rest is just like, I'd rather you just show me the rest of the scenes from this. I don't want to go find them. And then you run into the stage where it's like you're struggling to even find new scenes, and you have to start clicking on just random shit in every scene.
And you're like, oh, I already clicked on this cup. Oh, God.
And then it takes you like halfway through another scene, and you don't even realize you've seen that scene until like you watch it for another 30 seconds. It's frustrating.
And it comes to what we said in Best Story as well. I suppose it depends on your mileage with the story versus the meta story of it. So if what you're in for is like you're just looking for those scenes, then I totally get that. But like as somebody who was like totally swept up by the actual story you were seeing on top of it in terms of like the 3 films that I thought were great, and then just like the little.
But I just wanted to watch again. It comes down. I'd like to watch those movies.
Yeah, I just felt like I had that kind of like that little thrill of like nuggets of finding different bits for a lot longer than it seems like everybody else did. I don't think it's as good or as impactful in another medium. That's not to say it wouldn't be good in another medium. So like
I had similar feelings or emotions or whatever. I remember when I played Bandersnatch, and I remember getting to the end of that and going, I'd have probably just preferred having this as a thing that I could have just watched from beginning to end instead of having to.
What I would totally hear in terms of like, I know you're saying like in terms of playing it with a controller and stuff like that. If you want to say to me, I think it'd be much better playing it with a keyboard and mouse. Totally. Because like it gives you much more ability to manipulate that edit bay UI than like just a controller would. Absolutely. Or being able to use a mouse to drag and scrub through the timeline and stuff like that. But that's still like, that keeps it within the medium. I think that's the problem. I think it's like putting a game like this through a controller that has only so many inputs to it. I think that's the problem, rather than it not being a TV show or a movie. I think you definitely.
I don't know. I played this with controller and had no problem with it playing controller.
No, I didn't either. I think Mark's a crazy man, but
I had no issue playing with the controller.
But I'm trying to meet him halfway.
I will say even
my issue with this game was not the controller.
I will say that even acknowledging all these issues we talk about, I am also still glad it is a game, and it did give me that one sensation of every time you got to a particularly striking visual, like for the second film where she's standing between the 2 masks. I was like, I want to click on those masks so bad. What happens when I click on those masks? They take me to something cool, I bet.
Did anyone else click on boobs or just me?
Of course.
Yeah.
I think I clicked on a bum, I believe, at one stage. I don't think I clicked on
I also clicked on bums, would you believe?
Yeah. So we different gamers, different approaches.
And again, it goes
great to say that bums of the year goes to.
There is a sensational bum in this game, to be fair.
And it goes without saying, though, just like visually, and we spoke about this in Best Looking, but like just the production of this game, it's the thing that for me it hangs its hat on, and just the way that these 3 films look. And again, it comes back to like, I'd love to actually just watch these things. It's like a documentary or whatever the case may be.
It's also, you want to get wankery and talk about like games as artistic expression. It's the one of the 10 here that tries to do something different.
I wouldn't say it's the only one that does that, but I see like
I like when me and Mark had different reactions to that about very different games.
But yeah, look, I'm feeling the temp, so I love Immortality. I think Immortality should be in the upper echelon, but no accounting for taste, I guess.
Hey, it's top 10.
It is like it's top 10, and it is in my top 10, but it was, I think, 8. I put it out.
Look, when I started playing this, I had 2 reactions. 1, I fucking love this, and 2, these other 4 are gonna fucking hate this. So the fact that y'all liked it to some degree or another, I really am happy about that. And the fact that it finished so high in so many categories, I'm also really happy about that.
Yeah, listen,
it had a really good showing, to be fair.
Yeah.
It won Best Story,
that game stole 2 categories. Let's be fucking real. All right. I like Immortality a lot. That game stole 2 categories.
Huge deserved in the comments, please, for Immortality.
Huge salt. Absolutely dying like SpongeBob in that one episode in Sandy's house. That's me over that game winning 2 categories.
Once I got deeper into it, I was like, right, the category this wins. If it wins, then I think it's Best Story, and it did. So I think that's the right for it. Sorry, Barry.
It's me next. And just going on something that I thought Garrett was moving towards before, there are two games here that are the passion projects of certain people, and one gets a lot more talk than the other, Norco.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we've given it its plaudits. I don't think it picked up anything, unfortunately. I don't think it grabbed anything. But this is, I think we say this like every single year. If we had something in lieu of the classic Giant Bomb Best Style Award, maybe it would get that. Yeah, I don't think it looks the best, sounds the best, has the best story, but it has the best, and what I really mean is worst vibes, but worst vibes that are immaculately crafted. It's insanely cool and unique and depressing and cool and horrible. But to be fair, it's not. I think me and Mark are the high men on it, and I don't think it's the passion project for either of us. Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah.
No, look, it's not in my top 10. It's like
it didn't make your top 10.
It's like a 10B for me.
Wow,
is it in anyone's top 10?
I had it like 5 or 6, I think, in mine.
It would at a point in time it was in my top 10, but just a couple of things came out after that.
Okay, wow,
stole my attention. But it's very
cool.
It's very cool. It's like a number 11 for me.
Okay.
And I love so much about kind of like, I feel like a lot of the things that I like about Norco is kind of similar to like the feelings Dave has about Immortality. It's just such a unique and interesting concept. And I love the setting that it uses. I love that it's aping off of like a real life setting, but adding a slightly more kind of, dystopian, well, I don't know how dystopian it kind of is because of considering the sort of real life parallels that it uses. But I think that it uses the pixel art style in such a unique way. And it has a real like paint work sort of visual style to it. Like some of the backdrops, like the main title screen, which has it's kind of a backdrop of the sort of like oil refinery in Norco. Like that image alone is just like, you look at that and you stare at it for hours. And then there are, tens, if not hundreds of those sorts of backdrops in this game that are, some are more surreal than others. And, the game fucking goes places later on where it does get very surreal. As we mentioned, I think the issues are that like the ending is a little bit too cute in terms of being a bit like, you don't really know what's going on. And it's very much kind of by design. It's meant to evoke feelings, not necessarily express like what the point of any of this is. And I think as well that the minimal kind of combat or mechanical parts of the game that exist are very like wrote by the numbers. Yeah, there's not really that much to them. But just as a world, like, how Tunic was for me, as a world to just get lost in and just be absorbed in, it's that there are very few games this year that come close to what Norco does, but it's not top 3.
Okay. Garrett.
We are in very tough territory here. There is one game here that I actively dislike. And I'm afraid it is the one I hate Signalis. That game is I walked around that game and they're like, look at all these fucking locked doors. Why are they there? And it gives the throwback
because you can unlock them.
For you to find a key to unlock them. What are you talking about?
Locked, so you go
not
find
all of them. There's a bunch of them that
concept.
are locked doors that you need to find keys for, and then there's more that are just locked. Why do you have doors there?
It's a fucked up place.
It's a one-way system.
Sorry.
You can't go that way because you go round to come back through.
Hold on a second.
Nonsense.
Jack, do you want to go get like a sandwich or something? And we'll come back in about half an hour.
I've got my arms crossed. I'm just enjoying.
Walking around with
you need to just go and get
puzzles.
The butterfly key and place it upon the lady serpent's tongue statue. Okay, it's really fucking simple.
Well, that sounds like a cutscene from Neon White.
Like I don't play Resident Evil games, and even I fucking know this.
I played Resident Evil 2, the fancy new version. That's a good game. This isn't.
Very good game.
It's a bad game. Good vibes. It has good vibes. Bad
Just
game.
because he doesn't know how to work a
this
fucking door, honestly.
Yeah, you know what? Were you pressing the button that said push? You were supposed to press the one that says pull. That was your mistake.
Damn it!
You know,
And
If only you communicated that to me.
I like it when you put a key in a door and then a big lady chops your hand off with a knife. That's the kind of.
Look, I feel like what this is going to come down to is because if you've read my blog post, it is my game of the year. So I feel like
how dare you not do your reading? Reading would be your friend, Garrett.
The level of pushback.
Some would argue I might have done my reading.
You
You took Tunic from me.
Yeah. The only way this stays on is how much I feel like Barry wants to kind of back me on this. And if it's not in his top 3, then I feel like I've got no fucking chance. And I don't think it's in his top 3, so I feel like I've got no fucking chance. But
it is not in my top 3. But it was on my list. I think it was.
That's a huge scalp for Garrett.
You and Dave.
I can also swing Barry by being like, if you said pick another, it would be SiFu. So Barry,
I feel
like I had SiFu higher than Signalis for sure. I mean, and go on, Dave.
I feel bad for Mark because I feel like if I just got a few more hours into this game, I'd be right there with him. But it just suffers from.
Although I don't know, because I feel like part of why Signalis for me was like 6 instead of like 2 for me, because those parts of it where I was going, oh fucking hell, this might be my game of the year. This is fucking glad. Is I think it gets a little cute and a little Resident Evil-y to the extreme in the final act. So in a similar vein to the modern Resident Evil games, it has a really good map. And the map is like, here's all the busted doors, blah, blah, blah. Here's the typewriter, blah, 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 typewriter equivalent. Here's your save room. Great map. And it has the inventory system of Resident Evil yore, where you're kind of having to put certain items into storage because you can only carry so much. So you're having to make the tough decisions. Do I want to carry this key in lieu of ammo and things like that? And that's great. The final act of the game, they throw you into shitty Silent Hill meat world, right? Everything's very bad there. And they do a couple of cool things in isolation all at once that make the kind of House of Cards fall apart for me. One of them is they do a nice impossible space thing. So during the rest of the game, if you go into the rightmost door in a room, the next screen you come out of the left, right? Because they're giving you, normal, typical physics, the way things should work. But then in crazy, spooky Silent Hill final act, you come out completely random directions, right?
Can I just point out, Barry, by the way, that's not the final act. There's a whole other parts of the game.
You know what I mean, though. It's
I know what you mean, but it's not the final act.
What do you mean? How is it not the final act?
Because there's a whole other sub area after the Silent Hill section. I think it's because there's multiple endings, and I'm guessing you got
but the other ending presumably doesn't add. But it's not a different.
It's not a different ending. There's more to the game after that. But
the point is, the thing is bad.
Yeah, you know the section I'm talking about.
I know this. I know the section.
So they do this impossible space thing where you might go into the leftmost door in one room, and then you'll come out of the bottom of the next room, right? Just to, whatever, it makes you discombobulate you a little bit. But they also take away your map, which again in isolation kind of like, okay, look, we're in Silent Hill town, that's fine, you want to take away the map.
That area does get frustrating.
It is also the area with the most enemies.
Yep.
And it is also the area where you have 17 bullshit Resident Evil puzzle pieces, this fucking statue finger, this ring, this key, this piece of eternity. I'm like, I have one space to carry a weapon. I have no map. The doors are spitting me out in directions that are deliberately hard to construe. Which way am I going? And I'm like, yeah. You got too high on your own supply.
They push it to the nth degree.
Feels like every little problem I had at the start of the game taken to the furthest extreme they possibly.
It's kind of the game.
It is kind of the stuff that I kind of like, because I do like that classic RE style. But like I said, they got too cute. They did too much. I'm like, okay, take the map away, but reduce the number of puzzle items if I'm gonna, because I'm fighting so many enemies that I have to have ammo. And so what happened is that I'm constantly having to just cheese it in a really lame kind of vibe killing way, where I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna bring all my ammo and stuff and clear this room, and then go back and drop all my stuff and then go get all my key items. And I was like, this is not, they fell at the final hurdle.
And because the thing is, the thing as well is because the game up until that point is quite nifty in terms of you don't feel like you're in one area for too long. Because you've got the first 2 floors, and then the next area is 3 floors, but you're not they're kind of slightly short condensed version of the other 2 floors, and you're kind of nipping around them. But by the time you do get to the Silent Hill section, Yeah, because of the way they kind of push everything to the nth degree, the oppressiveness for one thing is there, but the pace does slow down a little bit, but then it picks back up again for the last section, which I'm sad you didn't get to. Yeah, look.
But I saw credits. So what are we talking about here? Is it a post-credits thing?
No,
Are they hiding the end of the game? What are they doing in this stupid game?
Oh yeah, because like you see absolutely everything in Elden Ring. Yes, that's exactly
Answer my question.
That is
stop
a
arguing
real
with
false
Garrett. Answer my
equivalency.
question.
Yeah,
that's a conversation we'd have to have off screen because I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay. So my final cutscene, I'm assuming this is a bad ending thing, is like she like tears off her arms trying to open a door. Is that a bad ending thing?
Well, that happens regardless. But if you didn't see anything after that, then yeah, I'd have to look into it. Because
I'll Google it and see what
that happens anyway, as far as I'm aware. But there is a whole thing afterwards.
Okay, weird. But I because I knew there was multiple endings. I didn't realize there was an additional area or section.
Oh yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Garrett is sitting there going, the fact that doesn't communicate that means it's bad.
It is.
Garrett is also the guy that like walked into a room and just went, fuck all of you, walked out, and everyone had an argument.
Yeah, I'm just like, you argue amongst yourselves and get Signalis off this list in the end. No matter how long you want to argue amongst yourselves, but
it's gone. Okay, Barry.
Okay, it's just gotta be.
There's one game. There's somebody here in this room that can't believe their own luck that a game that only they champion is still here.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Dave, because it is now time to ask the question: Does Xenoblade get to the top 3 on the Garrett campaign?
It can't.
I will commend his efforts. Listen, he got fucking best music.
But also knowing Garrett, like in between night 2 and night 3 of recording, it may no longer be in his top 10 for all I know.
That's for everybody.
I heard him earlier. He wants to put Tinykin back on. Let's talk about it.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. Like I said when I was talking to Dave, when I was like, I think this might be my game of the year, that there will come a moment where one of the 4 of you will look at this list and see the words Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And that moment will come, and it has come, and I'm okay with it coming. As I said, I was listening to some other Game of the Year podcast, the Min-Max one, where I think Kelsey Lewin was the champion of this game. And it's the exact same vibe, where it's like the one person who played this game is like, no, guys, it was really good. I swear, take my word for it. I think it's a really good game. It's a shockingly good game, honestly. And there's because over the last, I think, whatever week or so since we recorded the last part, I've been like, all right, I want to get some Marvel Snap in. I want to try some more God of War. I'm like, no, I'm just playing more Xenoblade. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm just gonna keep playing all the side quests because there's almost like a borderline unfathomable amount of content in that game. I'm 74 hours in now. Jeez. And because the way the combat works is you have the 6 main characters, and then you have a 7th guest character of which you can choose from, I think, up to 20, maybe more. All of which have their own individual side quests where you unlock them, and all of which have their own individual side quests where you power them up. All of which are like fully voiced side quests that some tie into story. Like there's a character Shania in the main story, and you're like, oh, I realized when I got to the end, I didn't see the resolution of her story because it's over in one of the side quests. There is so much content. The game is like buckling under the weight of the amount of content they shoved into this thing, and like it is a very dense, heavy JRPG. If you don't come into this game with like the grandfathered in of the first 2 games, you might be like, I don't want to deal with all these numbers and all these things I meant to do and all these buttons I meant to press. But it is far and away the best version of the combat in any of these games. And I think like I could talk about the music, which I had like 4 more points to make about music, but it won by default. Thanks for that, guys. Like it was like I could talk about how the music is a bunch of callbacks to the first 2 games, and it's really well done and has a bunch of motifs that some of which are like recontextualized in the soundtrack. Or I could talk about how I did talk about the flutes. The flutes was the best part, but ultimately I think it just comes down to the story, and I think this game has just a phenomenal story and a really interesting world, and they explore that world and those characters from so many different interesting angles that I'm like, God, this game. I really didn't anticipate it being my game of the year.
Like I got to the point where you have to like take down the airship, and then there's one person in there who's like, no, you see, you think we're the bad people, but we're not. There's this other bad thing that happens, and then they get immediately murdered while they're trying to communicate this to you. And I'm like, oh shit, Like, and so I'm already hooked. I don't know how close to how deep that is into the game in terms of like percentage of the way through. It feels like quite early on still, but I'm really interested in the story so far. I don't know if I know what's 100% going on, but I don't know if I'm meant to.
There'll be a little bit of that all the way through. It's a JRPG, but like there is like moral gray areas in this game that are really interesting to explore, where you do come across people who firmly believe in their position, and then they're like, well, how do you know you're right? How do you know that this world will be better if you tear it down? Maybe it will be worse. Maybe we are better off the way things are. And it gets very existential by the end. Super duper existential. But yeah, it's a really good, again, it's a game that's not going to convert people. I always talk about, like, is it the convert game? Where Elden Ring might be, and I think for a lot of people was. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 absolutely isn't. It's more approachable than the series has ever been, but it's still a really big, silly JRPG that has less of the excesses than 2. 2 had so much nonsense in it. 2 had all the anime boobs and nonsense. Whereas this is like, oh, there's actual real well-rounded characters and well-written characters and, God forbid, Mark, well-performed characters in this video game. As I said, I knew it would go eventually. I was wondering, could I snake it into top 3? I thought it was pretty unlikely. But yeah, I'm fine with it going here.
You've done it very proud. You have done it very proud. I think that's fair to say.
I was honestly very pleased when it won music, because like when people watched the Nintendo Direct for this, there was like this big sweeping powerful piece of music and everyone was like, I wonder what emotional part of the game that'll play. And in the game it's the boat song. It's the song that plays when you ride around in the boat, and it's one of the most like big sweeping awesome pieces of music you'll ever hear. The music in this game is just next level ridiculous. So good. And I'm very glad it won unanimously. It might be added. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 in music. But yeah. Farewell, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. We barely knew thee.
You've done very well to get it into an unofficial 7th place, even though I suspect it was like, I know personally in my case, I thought twice about taking a swing at it, and I was just like, oh, I'm sure Garrett will take it off himself, and then you fucking didn't, you cheeky git.
Yeah, leave it there as long as anyone's willing to leave it on.
Okay,
like the fact that when we're talking about the fact that I didn't have to take out like Neon White or Signalis myself in music is still my proudest moment.
Yeah,
you all did my dirty work for me.
Okay, Jack. There's no friends to be made anymore.
Nah. Of the games that left, so I've played 3 of them. I've watched significant chunks of the other 3, and the one that least impresses me of those, I would say, is probably Vampire Survivors.
Wow.
Can I say something?
Go on.
Because we've had all of the industry come out with like their game of the year and all this kind of jazz. I feel like I'm out on an island when I look at Vampire Survivors and I just go, it's a nice little game.
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me.
Wow.
It looked like one of those mob iPhone games, you know, where like
you can't, to be fair, you can't watch Vampire Survivors.
No, it's a play. It's a thing.
Right, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't.
Like no, but you could probably watch like Live Alive. Like you're not going to be like, oh, I didn't interact with the JRPG mechanics.
I can't wait for the Octopath like 2.5 HD version of Vampire Survivors that I can get on board with.
I think you're right, and it probably goes, Jack. But I'm kind of surprised at Mark's take, because it did seem like a quintessential Robinson game, and I thought it was fucking great fun.
I think the game rules.
Yeah,
it's a little bit too simplistic for me.
I wouldn't have been surprised if it snuck into 3rd place.
I also was expecting it to do that on the basis of being a bit of a crowd pleaser that we all kind of
apparently not.
I was actually if you'd put a gun to my head and say, did we all play it and like it before I came on this podcast, I would have assumed.
I loved it. I enjoyed my time with it, but
it's not in my top 3, but I kind of thought, well, I thought as a bit of a peacemaker. I mean,
again, Barry, it's this or SiFu for me. So
yeah, I mean, I suppose on that basis, I won't push my luck on it.
It is. I'm like I think I was the original evangelist. Actually, maybe Barry played it first, and then I jumped on board. But I'm okay with it going here too, because at the end of it, it's not the most complex game in the world. It's a super fantastic turn your brain off and kill just hundreds of things. And the system, like, to say it's simplistic, I think it is a little unfair, because like the systems behind it and the number of weapons you have and the number of characters you have and like the number of enemies on screen, I feel like it's it's like it's what the Warriors, the Dynasty Warriors games kind of should be. This is like a more satisfying version of those games.
I mean, in fairness, I do create my own bed there because I am a garlic player. So yeah, that is.
And I do love it, but like of what's left, it's probably fourth. So
I think that's fair. But I mean, I think what's really cool about it, and we might have even talked about this in an earlier category, is obviously it is a clone of another game. That's another point to make up. But what's funny is you really see how important it is to put your own spin on a game, because the thing that came before this is not remotely as compelling, because they made a really cool, lovingly crafted faux Castlevania aesthetic. The music is fantastic. I don't even think we nominated it, but it is really good. The look of it is great. All those the really just like charmingly old school little ghouly enemies that could have been ripped straight out of a 16-bit game. It's a perfect concoction, because it is not just that. It is a really dumb lizard brain number go up game, but also the little package around it is really fantastic. Do you know what I mean? They've done a really great job dolling it up. But I would say of what's left, I think I'm surprised to see it go, but I don't have a problem with going.
The one thing I will say for it, but one of you would have to speak for it if you got to that point in the game. But I never got to the point in the game where basically the entire screen is filled up with numbers.
I got to that.
At that point, I presume that there is no slowdown. I presume that it
no, never.
It's actually insane how, because like not only is there enemies, like at that stage when you get to like the 29th minute, you're also popping off like 7 different abilities. Like there's spears flying everywhere, there's explosions going everywhere, you're shooting magic, you have cats attacking everything around you. Like the amount that happens on screen, like people are like because I thought it's the same. It's like, oh, it'd be a wonderful Switch game, and then like you would think, of course it can run on Switch, but then you'd be like, can it run on Switch?
That's
the thing. Much happens on the screen.
If the game fucking got to the point where it was playing like GoldenEye multiplayer, that would completely kill it. It would just kill the experience. So the fact that it does, and I'm sure like the developer knew in mind that if I'm going to do this the way I want to do it, this thing has to run seamless throughout.
And that kind of loops back into to the Kirby talking point from earlier, where I was like, it's a predominantly vibey experience, and even though they're not massive, the technical limitations hurt it. Same with this. If this thing chugged once, I'm like, okay, but that is like, okay, well, I'm out of it now, because this is supposed to be, this game is just raw dopamine. Like it's like a machine gun of dopamine, and if it stutters and that machine gun jams once, like, oh, that's killed it, and it doesn't. And now I haven't gotten very far in the phone version, but I haven't seen any complaints.
I will say at least a handful of Steam Decks were sold on Vampire Survivors alone.
I think it is like the Steam Deck game of the year. If the Steam Deck doesn't exist, this is on fewer game of the year lists.
Totally. Yeah.
That's how important this game was ultimately to Steam Deck. It's somehow this game is the Steam Deck killer app.
And the funny thing is, well, we don't really take like value into accommodation for these awards, but it's like £2. It was like £2 for most of this year. It's like £3 now. And also, even though it got popular and then went 1.0 this year, so I guess it would never qualify for our kind of updated game. But man, they updated the shit out of this, and they rolled stuff out, and they got to 1.0, and they've now done DLC, which apparently is great, which I haven't gotten to yet.
And it's also like 150.
It was also quids.
But yeah, you say that because I remember playing the whatever kind of beta version that was on the PC preview, version of Game Pass. And like that, the work they've done between then and now, they've absolutely put the work in, and the value is just, it's ridiculous.
I didn't know it was that cheap.
Yeah, it's that cheap, and they put it on Game Pass. If I could give one last big pat on the back for Game Pass, it's that I played that game on PC when it was in preview mode, and then when I played the 1.0 version on console, my progress was instantly there the second I booted up. Didn't have to press a button, didn't have to go into a menu, it was just there.
Did you, like me, just get like 10 minutes of achievement points just pinging from
God, that was so good. Yeah, that was so good. Because when I was playing it on PC, it didn't have achievements at that point. So then when I just installed it, it's like, oh, this is out in console, let's revisit. It's like, oh, my unlocks are here. Oh, look at all these achievements. The dopamine's back. I remember this.
So we are now at 5 games. Elden Ring, Splatoon 3, SiFu, Live Alive, and Citizen Sleeper. And it is the turn of one Mark Robinson. to make this the second last cut.
Oh boy. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. All right. Now, there's one game here that I didn't finish. Obviously, I didn't finish Elden Ring, so we can put that to the side.
Yeah,
we don't need to get to that. There's one game here I didn't finish. And I don't know if it's because of the game itself or because of me. I know that they updated it to make it a little bit easier. But I did get to a point with SiFu where I got burned out from it because there's that wall that we talk about. Elden Ring has that wall. SiFu has that wall. And it's the second fucking level. And boy, do you have to get your reflexes in place to get past that second level. And I got past that second level. But unlike with Elden Ring, where that wall came down, and I was like, I'm right ready to go for the next thing. I was going through that museum in the third area, and I was just like, I don't know if I can be fucked with this thing anymore. And
it is an even bigger wall again.
Yeah,
it kind of is. It kind of is.
It's a bigger wall again with "eat shit, dickhead" written on it.
Yeah.
I know you didn't finish it, Mark. Did you get to the last boss?
Nope.
The last boss is painful. The last boss is maybe the most painful boss I've ever faced in my life.
Kind of like with Olli World, where I got to the DLC and I was like, well, I don't remember to fucking play this thing. I came back to SiFu like, I don't know, 2-3 months later, and it was like I was playing the thing for the first time again, which isn't surprising considering what the game is. And I was like, do I want to go through that first 2 levels another 25 times again? As cool as the fucking start of level 2 is when you go into the bar, as previously mentioned, when that music blasts in and you smash someone over the head with a bottle, great time. I don't know. I feel like I'm more disappointed with myself that I didn't finish the game more than anything else. But I would say
the easy mode is for.
There is that, but I don't want to play it on easy mode. I feel like I would just be calling myself a coward, which I am not doing the normal mode anyway. I don't know. I want to have the conversation here to see how we feel. I know that I think of a bunch of us, more of us have finished Live Alive than SiFu.
Yeah.
I would say maybe I had more of a dopamine high with SiFu, but it's just because it's a more visceral type of game to get that experience from.
Yeah.
But I feel like
It's like my problem with SiFu, which is very much a me problem. It's not a game problem, but like this game requires you to learn how to do the blocking and like the high block, low block stuff. And I'm just, anytime a game is built around being defensive as opposed to offensive, my brain is like, no, that is not satisfying. And there's also that's very much like a game that there's nothing wrong with this game. This game is perfect for what it's trying to do, but that what it's trying to do is so like antithetical that's a word to how I'm trying to play video games.
Well, it's like there's a block and there's a parry, and
it's hard. I mean, there's no denying it's hard.
I generally, up until the moment that I felt like I was getting good at the game, I still couldn't really decipher like what I should use in certain situations, and I was just kind of winging it, and it
doesn't communicate to you super clearly that because there's not like the second boss is the wall, and what it's funny is that like in following 3 bosses are also super fucking tough, but so basically the second boss, what will to beat the first boss, you don't have to, but you kind of need to get to grips with the duck, right? You can, but you can kind of cheese it. You'll die a little bit, but you can beat the first boss just by kind of playing aggressively. Second boss is the one where what Garrett was talking about comes to fruition. That's where you realize this is a defensive game. You have to play it, but it's not kind of like if he kills you enough times, you get a pop up that says, "Hey, the trick to this is you have to." So there's a duck, but then there's also L1 is your block button, and then the left stick will do your dodges, and you can either duck, and the other one is lift your leg to avoid a sweep, and it's great because the second boss doesn't do a ton of sweeping attacks, but that's what makes him an arsehole because they're not so frequent. It's just kind of like you're blocking and you're ducking, and you don't see the sweep attack coming, and the game's not going to say, "Hey fucker, what you need to be doing is lifting your leg to avoid the sweep." It's pretty much just on you. It's kind of funny that in the year the most accessible From game came out, the SiFu also came out, and SiFu is fucking tough, and it's I mean, it doesn't have the obtuseness of a From game because it's so linear. It is pretty much walking in a straight line, but it does have it in the sense of we're not, we'll tutorialize you once on what the mechanic is, but you're not getting a little pop up saying, "Hey, this is the duck boss. You need to duck." They're not. They will not do that.
So I get a companion character saying, "You need to duck."
Oh, I mean, and I guess like the funny thing is about this year and the theme of this year, and part of why Elden Ring is so great is I guess it's also part of why I love SiFu as well. Is that I guess I've never been a I love hard games guy, but this year was kind of the year where I was starting to appreciate games that were just like fucking figure it out. You just fucking figure it out, and if people bounce off it, completely understandable, but for whatever reason, these were the games. And I think it's the aesthetic of the games to both Elden Ring and SiFu. I mean, we talked about it in Moment and things like that. I just love the vibe of these games. Of SiFu specifically. I think it looks great. I think it sounds great. And I think I actually was getting the dopamine hit off the defensive play, which I have also never previously been. That's not my kind of thing. So it's kind of like when the second boss who has the staff, I streamed myself trying to get a no death run, and I successfully achieved it. And it was as satisfying as any Bloodborne victory I had on stream, because it's just kind of like when you're pulling off those, okay, he's swinging the staff of your head, and you're in the space of about like a second, you're doing duck, and then lift your leg to avoid the sweep. It's like I'm the boss now. I'm the boss character, and the AI is afraid of me now. It's that, and it's just like it is that from thing of the punishment makes the reward all the more worth it. And it is unfortunately, it is just a get good thing. And I know not everyone, because I was not that way for years. I would not butt my head again, and I still kind of won't. I rage quit Scorn on stream this year because I'm not figuring this out. I don't give a fuck about this.
That's a very different kind of.
It's a different kind of thing, but the philosophy of either figure it out or don't is applied. But man, I think
the thing with SiFu as well though is that because you can make the comparisons between Elden Ring and SiFu in terms of like these incredibly punishing bosses that you're going to be doing multiple times to figure out the attack patterns and blah 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 blah. For the most part with Elden Ring, it's like you die, you start your bonfire and off you go again, or Grace Point, whatever the fuck it's called, and you go again. And you do that as many times as you need to until either you hit the wall and decide I can't fucking do this anymore, or you fuck off and go do something else. But with SiFu, there's that double punishment where you'll hit your head against the wall with a boss, but like on top of the fact that there is a finite point that you get to where if you die you have to fucking go back and do the whole thing again. But there's that like the whole gimmick around like you aging and you aging like more kind of increasingly or exponentially with every death, and the added frustration that comes with that. Like in a way, if I play fucking Elden Ring and I've got a boss like the Tree Sentinel, for example, I'll do it 20 times. All that's happening there is I'm just doing it 20 times and I'm figuring out bit by bit the thing that I need to do, and there's no additional punishment there.
Yeah.
You might lose your souls.
That's the worst part.
Even that's only once. You lose them once, and then I love it. I love in Elden Ring when I lose my souls because I'm pot committed now. I've nothing left to do. So I'm here for the afternoon now trying to beat this.
And that kind of goes away after the first few hours as well, when you start getting into the routine of like, before I go to somewhere that looks dangerous, I'm going to spend all
it's so more thing while you're exploring one of the dungeons, and you're like, oh shit, I have 50,000
I think the first time I went into an Everjail, I got stuck in that loop because I lost my souls inside the Everjail, and I didn't realize that the souls will then spawn outside the Everjail. But I didn't realize that because it was like hidden behind a fucking rock or some shit. So I thought I was stuck in a loop of I have to go back and just until I beat this thing, because at that stage it was like significant amount
as punishing as Elden Ring is, and it's well documented, I think SiFu is a much more punishing game.
I think so, because like you're saying with that the age stacking mechanic, like you can like you say, you can only lose your souls once in Elden Ring. You can watch a great run go down the fucking toilet in SiFu because you die once, you die twice, and it's like, okay, that's added 3 years. It's not like if it was adding a year every time you die, that'd be pretty tough, but it'd be one thing. But it's like, I remember like when I was before I beat the game, on my initial run through it, like I think the museum was kind of the wall after the wall. That's level 3. So that was another one where I was kind of like, this is the point where I'm either going to quit or beat it. And that was the one where I perfected the level and I got to the boss without any deaths. And then I was dying so often at the boss that like one death was adding 10 years to my life. I was like, what is going on? It was like, if this game wasn't so like cool and fun, I probably would have given up by now. But look, I don't think it's gonna stay, unfortunately.
I got to top 5.
It got to top 5. I absolutely love it. I said on my list, I said on a non-Elden Ring year, it would be my number 1. I think it's the type of game I've been like, in terms of its aesthetics and kind of offering you that kind of, you know, old boy experience that we talked about. And it's kind of, you know, when you look at the way the animations play out, you know, it can satisfy a certain John Wick itch. It's kind of like, it's a game I feel like I've been waiting for years, but I didn't realize on a gameplay level that I actually wanted something like this. Like that museum fight, like so that's another one where you have to do high-low dodges, but she has these amazing kind of blades on the end of chains, and she's like kicking them at you. I mean, all the animations in this game, they are very Blades of Chaos. They are very, and like she's kind of this I can
imagine that God of War wouldn't even have won Best Blades of Chaos this year.
Yeah, she's like this.
Look, it's been gone
sorry,
for
mate.
ages now.
Sorry.
There's like
you
this,
see an open goal and you have to tap it in. I'm sorry, buddy.
Yeah, and by the way, SiFu needs to go because you all started talking about how much you loved Elden Ring instead of SiFu a minute.
Which is the reason it's going.
No, SiFu's going. SiFu, I think
it's
that's fair to say. But I wanted to just make mention of like there are so many more moments that we didn't chat about because I think they're deeper in the game. I mean, like I said, the last boss fight is one of the biggest fuckers you will ever face in a video game. I would absolutely put money on it. I would say any Souls head who hasn't played this game, play this game and tell me what you think of that last boss. It is bananas. It is absolutely, and it's another one where I had played the game to death and I'd gotten a run down pat where I was able to get basically to him with only a handful of deaths, and then I got to him and I was getting 10 and 12 deaths in a row and all this other stuff. But there's so many cool moments in there, like the museum sequence, the museum level after the club has a lot more kind of trippy stuff in it, where you're kind of, it's a gorgeously designed level, and then you're kind of going into these kind of more kind of weird, like spiritual kind of dream sequence type things, and the color palette of the level is changing every time you do a takedown. And then the all the boss fights themselves, they take place in this kind of otherworldly kind of place. Like the first boss is a botanist, and when you fight him, the level kind of transforms into this like jungle type location, and then the museum fight takes place in this like snowy kind of desolate mountaintop at the top of the museum. It's got so much character to it, and it's insanely satisfying to play. But yeah, look, I think getting to an honorary 5 here is more than enough. It is coming to, I think it's whatever consoles it is not yet on. It's coming in the next few weeks. Xbox, I think, and is it out on Switch yet, or it's coming to Switch?
I think it's already on Switch.
I feel like it's out on Switch.
Steam, sorry, it's Xbox and Steam. It's coming to. I'm gonna have to get this
right.
game on Steam Deck. Oh god, another fucking 40 quid down the bang.
It's time for me to make the final cut before we go to our order of 3. And I feel like with Immortality gone, I feel like it would be disingenuous for me to cut any other game, because I'm looking at the 4 and I've got my headcanon top 3 of what's left and another game. And much as this may ruffle feathers, I can't not go for it on this, because again, it would be disingenuous. Citizen Sleeper.
I've got a proper fight.
I think Citizen Sleeper. Think of everything I said about SiFu and the fact that it was 2 on my list behind Elden Ring. But coming into this, I was like, but Citizen Sleeper is the one that I feel has to make it. It has to make it.
This is my Celeste. This is my Cuphead. This is my Hades.
This is my Control. Dave, remember when we teamed up and got Control?
I do, but I can't. Like, I love you, man, but like, I literally haven't played this.
I know.
I understand what you're picking. I do get that.
I have played a little bit, but I haven't like played it. Like, I'm not going to compare to the other 3 ever for a single second. And I guess the thing at this stage, because we kind of have established how Mark and Barry are on it, is I guess to gauge Garrett and Jack on this, because like how realistically it makes it over the finish line.
Fairness, one of these games Garrett has at multiple times this year called it his game of the year, and it certainly wasn't Citizen Sleeper.
I think all 3 of the other games have been Garrett's game of the year.
I think.
Let me tell you about Sleeper. Honestly, to me, it would be between. I think there's enough passion for Citizen Sleeper that it should be top 3. If I'm honest.
Honestly,
I think for the people who feel strongly about it probably. I cut Splatoon here personally, but
okay. Well, if you're going to cut Splatoon, then that's because I'm like, my 3 and 2 is level between Splatoon and Live Alive, but I feel kind of like I feel with Splatoon, if I was to leave that high in my top 3, what I'm actually voting for is the experience I had with my friend rather than the actual game.
And I feel like
Splatoon's my game of the year. Like,
yeah, I think all of that, the experiences.
I don't think you have to discount it because it's
I'm trying to figure out. But I also had great experiences with the other 3, but I also think they're substantially better games.
I mean, if I go purely on like on a desperate tactic or an angle here, I might finally throw in hey, this is a remake of a game from 25 years ago.
But that's already been settled law. Sorry,
Mark, you could literally. I'm once again, Mark Robinson, on your side. Once again, I'm okay cutting Splatoon over Citizen Sleeper, and then you pop in and throw Live Alive under the bus. Never mind, I'm supporting you, Dave. Get Citizen Sleeper out of here. Who cares anymore?
Let's 3 versus 2. It's gone.
I'm not saying that it's disqualified from this category because
too late.
But I think that
nah. You can't, that discussion is had before it gets on. You can't have it anymore.
We're on the same side. We're fighting for this review, but that was settled. We got to be fair. That was settled.
That's you can't let it on.
Even I was okay with it in the end.
But even I know you're not saying it's disqualifying, but even after we've settled that it is on here, to bring it up as something that counts against the others, we can't do that.
Fine. All right. So then I'll just go on that I fucking hate the last chapter of Live Alive. That's it. That's why.
You're trying to win over out of here.
And apparently I'm never playing a Dragon Quest game because of that. So
okay, so
get Citizen Sleeper out of here. Okay. I was so nice to you. I was so polite about it.
Citizen Sleeper is I mean, I think it was robbed on best story. I think it was genuinely completely robbed.
Yep.
I think it's easily the best story of the year. It's kind of like in terms of in terms of just an unbelievable ensemble, of characters. And in terms of weaving that into the story, and also it was never going to win best looking or music, but I think it's a phenomenal package too.
It could have something you said earlier. I think it could be one of those that if best style as a whole thing was a category, it could have done very well.
I think Norco would have got that. For you,
you're just
no, but it's not. I don't think it's style. I don't think that's the way.
Terrible game.
I think it's the world that it creates and the stories that it tells. And Barry made a point about the reward with the different kind of options that you pick is the story. That's the reward, and it does reward you with some incredibly compelling character arcs. By far the most compelling character arcs of the year. I wish, just because, and I can't say this with full confidence because I still haven't played Disco Elysium, but from what I know of it, it does ape in similar mechanics in a way that I think that you would really appreciate it.
Dave, I think you'd love
down
this.
And got around to playing it a bunch.
I don't know if you want to compare it to Disco Elysium.
I'm not comparing it.
It's not that it's as good. It's that it would very much be recommended under Disco Elysium on Steam, and if you like that, you may also like this kind of fashion. It's one of those. So. I mean,
I didn't full Garrett method this game, but I will say an hour or two or however long I played it, didn't grab me.
I would say that about Splatoon 3. I would say that same thing about that.
Is this where I make a Final Fantasy 13 argument where it's like you need to play it for a few hours before it gets good? I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that guy.
Final Fantasy 13 doesn't get.
But also
good,
in a year of like we said earlier, in a year of talking yourself out of winning something, there's never been a more epic. Right at the final line, you had Garrett putting Splatoon 3 onto the sword. Just talked.
Other than what you've talked about on the show, because I heard you all talk about it, it felt like there was a month of Live Alive on the show. I have not touched Live Alive, so I'm completely neutral on that, and it seems like everyone loves it. Okay. Let me. I made this exact argument about Hitman last year, and people didn't like it, but let me do it anyway about Splatoon. Guys, it's like just another Splatoon. It is just another Splatoon. Can I, as a Splatoon hater, and I'm not actually a hater, I'm playing up to it. But I think those games are very fun. The third best game of the year against these passion projects what could have been a map pack. Can we be real? Like, come on. Yeah,
have you
once
played
again.
Have you played the first player mode?
Barry, I'm just going to put Citizen Sleeper in red now because now you've both done Garrett.
It's over.
You can't. Don't put it in red because you think because I'm being a bit stiff here.
Okay. Barry, I'll put it this way: like me, and it sounds like Jack because Splatoon 3 seems to be the alternate here, as Splatoon 3 is not going for Jack. None of the other three are going for me. So Garrett was your swing vote, and you both absolutely done him in here.
I'm not gonna butter someone up to try and
you should because it worked great.
I'm not one to butter up. At least don't tear it down.
It's the content of the game's soul is what matters here, boys. That's what matters. Look, I'm not trying to be. Look, I played Splatoon 3. I had fun with it. But I had exactly as much fun as I had with 2. I've never been a Splatoon guy. That's completely fair. I would also say that as well. It's not this most recent one. It's always been a thing to me that I was kind of like, this seems cool, but I don't.
Did you play the single player mode?
Yes, and actually, I think I said this in the multiplayer category. I think I prefer the single player. It's
fantastic.
I am not moved by Splatoon multiplayer at all. Maybe if I got a couple of pals on a call like yourselves, that is the way multiplayer games are supposed to be enjoyed. They're not supposed to be enjoyed.
You did need to hear Jack scream reef slider down interiors
or teabagger.
That is how a multiplayer game is supposed to be enjoyed. And like I said to Dave earlier, I don't think you discount that against the game. I think that's pro this game. So don't get me wrong. My thing on Splatoon, I remember when Splatoon 1 came out, the point that everyone kind of made about what was kind of interesting about it was it was like a competitive shooter for people who don't like competitive shooters in a way. And maybe that's where my disconnect is with it, because I do like those games, and it's infinitely less charming, but something like Call of Duty in terms of in the hand feels about 1,000,000 times better than Splatoon, and that's kind of always been my barrier. But I've had my fun with it. And I enjoyed it. And like I said, I actually did prefer the single player to the multiplayer, because single player in Splatoon 2, I was kind of like, I know this is maybe a multiplayer game, but this isn't really doing anything for me at all. And single player in this one, I was kind of like, I was wondering what was coming up on that phone. I was like, I caught the tail end of it. I was like, what is that going to say? Anyway, the single player in Splatoon 3, I was like really interesting, like level design and like super satisfying collecting and navigating and stuff like that. And so I'm not saying it's terrible or anything at all like that. But
I think the issue we have here, Barry, is I would rather have Live Alive off than Splatoon.
So what? You're
sleepers out of here.
Sorry, no, but hang on. I'm not done filibustering yet.
You have not moved Garrett.
Honestly,
no, you have. You moved me plenty in the other direction.
I would say.
So can someone give me an earnest response to my point that this seems like just another one of those? Is there a counter to that other than we played it a lot and loved it? That's fair. I'm not saying that's unfair, but I'm saying that like against the passion project that me and Mark have put up on Citizen Sleeper, if and I think I said this in the multiplayer category, would you guys, all the fun you guys had with Splatoon 3 and it seemed like a load, if that game got pushed and you played Splatoon 2, would it have been a massively different experience to what you played with Splatoon 3?
There's no reef slider, so Jack wouldn't have been able to shout reef
okay,
slider.
Listen, they added new weapons and specials. Okay, that's cool. I feel like and like I feel like I also went hard on, like I said, I went hard on Hitman 3 also, but I also feel like that is a way more substantial new entry than this.
I can agree with you on that. But what I would say is, I think that single player mode of Splatoon 3 is one of the most underrated sections of a game of the year, because not only is it, everything that you like about all of the Splatoon mechanics, but at certain points it showcases every single weapon in the game, all of the different ranges that you can do with them, all of the different attacks that you can do with them, all the different power-ups you can do with them. It is a platformer at times, it's a rail shooter at times, it's a adventure at times, it's a puzzle at times. Like,
do you know what it actually reminds me of, Jack? Is like, so the way to use your trying to compare it to other shooters, which to me generally is like chalk and cheese, Splatoon and other shooters, right? In terms of like how much they give us in the story and how like unnecessarily much in a good way they give us, like relative to what you would expect from a single player in a modern shooting game. I think of like how a lot of modern shooters, when there's a single player, it literally is just an elongated tutorial.
Yeah.
Unless look, there
Which
are
was the
elements
case probably for some of the earlier Splatoon games.
Yes, and there are elements to that in maybe the first island where you're getting the basics of Splatoon and the platforming in it, but it goes so far beyond that in terms of like challenge and puzzle and things like that. What I would compare it to, which I think you will get the reference, Barry, is the Titanfall 2 single player.
Right.
Whereas like you did not have to put that much effort and that much depth into a campaign when the majority of people, if you had just done the multiplayer, were still buying it anyway.
Yeah.
It's a good 10-hour campaign.
Yeah, it's long.
Yeah,
and it's good because like it also, for each level, it's designed in a way where typically most of them you can traverse them with 2 to 3 different weapons that make the actual challenge of the level, varying levels of difficulty or varying ways to traverse them. So they
get, like, whatever the hardest one is, you get more points for.
Yeah.
And whatever the most straightforward one is. And it just encourages you to interact with, because how many shooter games, online multiplayer shooter games, and we all did this as well, do we find our weapon and mostly stick with our weapon? We do, right? So there's a whole bunch of playstyles and mechanics in Splatoon that you wouldn't get to do if it wasn't for the single player showcasing all of the various benefits and mechanics that are hidden within those different weapons that you can get in the game. And it helps you unlock more tokens to then use those weapons as you get further on in playing multiplayer.
And do you know what is an aspect that I think we take for granted with Splatoon 3 that we haven't talked about enough on this, is how unbelievably well balanced the multiplayer is, both in terms of matchmaking and in terms of there are no weapons or power-up combinations that give you there has not been an update to this game where it's like, oh, they have to fucking nerf this weapon. Do you know? Because
it's come across a sniper who absolutely murders you, and then someone else who you're just like, you're so bad at
but
this
that's
weapon.
it. Yeah, it's the only people you get who seem completely overpowered. It's not because of the weapon, it's because of how much time they put into the fucking weapon. Because like, so there's things like the bob lobber where I'm just like, holy shit, I keep getting absolutely rinsed by people with bob lobbers, and then I try with it myself, and I'm like,
absolutely useless,
absolutely dog shit. Like I would need to spend hours to try and perfect it. I can see how it could be useful, but like, you know,
but also you know how to counter it after a while. So like if you see someone blobbing, you know, you just got to backtrack and then aim whatever weapon you have at them and then try and take it.
There is no way to cheese the game either. Like in the multiplayer modes, like there's no, you can't just like, you know, camp somewhere or always use the same strategy to try and reliably win. You don't know from one match to the next. And then all the other stuff we brought in multiplayer and stuff like that about how they have hit that exact sweet spot in terms of victory feels tremendous, but defeat never feels bad enough that you want to just like put it down and walk away. You always want more.
And it's like 3-minute rounds as well, which is it's the perfect length. And in those 3-minute rounds, so much can develop, so much can happen. You can go from totally owning someone to having the misfortune of all getting taken out at the same time and then having to immediately go back and try and undo your mistakes. It benefits different play styles, like Mark staying back, chilling, painting the base, making sure that was all covered. You know, me and Dave,
you haven't lived until you've seen a Mark Robinson painted base.
Oh, it was so good. Purest of pure, and then like me and Dave just challenging headlong into the craziness of it all. Garrett just being a death merchant.
Garrett, one of history's great monsters.
The agent of death. And it kind of, you figure out your strategy as a team, and I think that's really nice. But even if you just get matched with random people online, it's still equally as fun to play. Like it's a multiplayer game that I'm happy to go away and play. Like, I'm not going to say it's, you know, it's probably a weird comparison, but it's a bit like Warzone, where I played with my friends a bunch and loved it, and I'd normally just sort of stop there. But on that first Warzone game, I carried on playing without my friends, and I just teamed up with other random people and still had the same amount of a good time. And there are a lot of other like online sort of multiplayer shooter games that I wouldn't do that with. But Splatoon, I put in some decent time just by myself, joining random groups and having a blast with it, because it's just so much fun. And the actual multiplayer hasn't changed too much, so that would kind of benefit towards Barry's argument a little bit, but there's just so many other great things about the game that for me pushes it above the other 2 Splatoon games that have come out so far. They've sort of rounded it off and perfected it so well, to the point where Splatoon 4 they could have like a Super Mario-esque like platformer length on one side and the multiplayer on another side, and then it'd be like, wow, they've just nailed it. They've nailed the formula. Splatoon 3 feels like the ultimate perfection of what's come before it to me. Anyway.
Yeah, they finally did a single player campaign that didn't left me feeling like I wanted more.
It didn't feel like it didn't feel like it was just there because it had to be.
Yeah,
it's like Dave, you mentioned the tutorials. Like the first two are very much their tutorials, whereas this is like, how far can we take the mechanics in this?
Yeah.
How many Super Mario Sunshine throwback boss fights can we do? Which might be an argument against it for Barry, but Big Man's boss fight.
Hang on, I was just about winning.
Too bad.
I was just about winning to get. Wait. Oh,
there's a throwback to the Manta Ray boss fight from it's much more tolerable in this game, which might be an argument for this game being good than it was in Super Mario Sunshine.
Yeah, like if it goes back and fixes Mario Sunshine, you might have Barry back on the ship.
Yeah, maybe it is all right.
I was willing to be gracious. It is probably ultimately disingenuous for me to vote against the game I really enjoyed versus a game I played for 15 minutes and said immediately no thank you. But
I feel like I've hit a wall here. It seems like there's no budget on either of these things.
Well, so here's the thing, because again, I would rather take off Live Alive than Splatoon, and I think that there's at least a universal like we like Splatoon. I just let me finish my sentence. We like Splatoon a lot.
Two of them shaking their heads.
So
well, that's what we were trying to say. We were trying to not interrupt him as he was talking, but register our discontent.
Right. So, but we need to now have a conversation about.
Concussion.
We need to now have a conversation about Live Alive because, like, you know, we are at an impasse at the moment. So.
We have 3 people voting to get rid of Citizen Sleeper.
Look, funnily enough, of the 3 here, if you guys did want to cut Elden Ring right now,
I mean, Jack, look, I'm on board with you there, but you know that's a different conversation.
I think I mentioned this probably way at the top. Actually, it was definitely at the top. It was when we were talking about the games we didn't get to. I didn't get to Live Alive. You know, it was another one of those ones where Gareth said it's not going to convert. I will never be a JRPG guy. I've tried.
Just fundamentally, Citizen Sleeper is a better game than Live Alive. It just is.
It to an extent, it did convert me. Because I'm not a JRPG guy, and Live Alive is one of my top.
But hang on, Dave, you have played every generation of Pokemon. That is a JRPG, isn't it?
It's not the same. It's not like it's not the same.
I'm not saying they're the exact same, but it's you're more inclined that direction than.
There's still a difference between a Pokemon game and a SquareSoft JRPG.
Yes,
of course. I've never been but my point is not. My point was just that's why I haven't touched it. It's not for any other reason other than that. So I am completely agnostic on it. But I mean, you know, if Mark, if you want to take the floor and give one last push, try and get.
I mean, there's not much I can do here. Like, it's either that or I get desperate that I've got nothing this year, and this is the one thing I can put my hat on. I just Live Alive has some really strong points, but it's not a perfect game. Like, it has a bunch of chapters that aren't particularly interesting. I think that ending chapter, the pacing is fucking horrendous on it. I think that the combat system is like you kind of can just brute force through most of it. There's not that much in the way of like a tactical approach to how you play through that. You know, the strong points, it's a beautiful looking game that is a version of other very beautiful looking games with that 2.5 HD style. I very much appreciate
like saying all HD graphics games, like all fancy realistic games are the same beautiful looking version of HD realistic games.
No, this is the same style. This is very much the style they've done on other
God
projects.
of War and Elden Ring are 2 very different looking games that are doing that 3D style.
I kind of disagree on the combat because I think, like, obviously it's that sort of like zone based, you know, targeting combat, but every new level or every like age has a slightly different take on it. You know, whether it's upgrading your weapons in the sort of like initial ages or like learning the moves in the present day, all of that, it's all got a twist.
I think it's a super tight version of that kind of combat as well, which I normally absolutely detest. I think it's simple enough to follow, but offers enough kind of diversity and complexity as well that you can really get into the weeds.
There's complexity in terms of like the moves, in terms of like the spaces feel different, but in terms of the actual bells and whistles, it for me felt the same the whole way through, and it was like the least engaging part of the game for me.
Yeah,
despite some of the chapters
I couldn't disagree more there, especially when
me
like
either.
each individual chapter has
different.
completely different characters. Like there's a Street Fighter version where it's just one-on-one, it's just you versus one enemy.
Yeah,
that feels completely different from like the space one, which has no combat at all besides the final boss battle.
Obviously that has no count, but that's obviously that is different.
But then there's other
like
ones where you're like. There's the Edo Japan one where like even before you get into combat, you can there are ways you can try and like be very clever and avoid having to do combat.
But that's not what I'm talking about.
But no, even when, but I'm not finished. I'm not finished.
I'm
not finished. Even when you get into combat, like each chapter feels wholly different because sometimes you're squatting up and there are different ways to chain attacks together to make for more devastating combos. There are chapters in it where it behooves you more to play a defensive style and consider the entire map. There are ones where like the Street Fighter one where just getting aggressive is the best way to go and things like that. I think every chapter feels massively different in terms of how you control that combat. I think it's oversimplification to the extreme to say otherwise.
I think the chapters feel different. I don't think the combat is different, but that's
I guess it's insane.
It's completely different. It's not.
Yeah.
The actual chapters in terms of the story and the beats and that sort of stuff, they are different.
Yes, they feel different.
What do you want? Do you expect it to become an action RPG? Do you expect it to be a different genre of combat?
No, I just
this next one's a card game.
There's no, for me, they were just, I didn't feel that tactical depth in the actual combat. I never felt it. I just felt I'm just brute forcing my way through this.
In prehistory, did you not like try and upgrade your gear and your weapons and stuff that, you know, from the bits and pieces that you kind of finding around the place or from the different enemies that you were taking down, and then you kind of felt like the growth and the progression throughout that?
Not really, because I didn't enjoy the prehistoric chapter.
So you just didn't engage with the combat. That's what you're saying.
I mean,
hang on. If he got through it without engaging with it, that's not against.
That's not to say
point.
it's all the same though. It's like
it's against the way that it's all the same. Yeah.
There's tons of like Xenoblade is a game that has tons of systems that I don't touch. Like, but they're there. I'm not going to be like the combat's all the same because I played the game the same. I don't have to do it that way.
Well, like
it's like going to Hitman and being like, I beat these levels the exact same way every time. How dare this game not differ?
And each chapter as well. It's not like a thing where you can unwittingly play each chapter absolutely the same. It definitely, the game is showing and telling you these are different ways you can play.
Well, that's more compelling because what I was actually going to disagree with the Hitman point. Hitman compels you to do things because it's fucking cool to do it the other ways.
Yeah,
I don't want to. I have not played this game. I don't want to get involved. I'm just saying that if you aren't compelled to engage with something, that's on the mechanic, not you. Do you know what I mean?
Look, as somebody who wouldn't typically be a fan of these zone-based these zone and turn-based at the same time combat things, like I know, you know, like you said earlier, Barry, Pokemon has the turn-based element, but the zone and turn-based thing, as somebody who typically wouldn't be a fan of these, if it was a thing where I didn't feel compelled and could just cheese through it by doing the exact same thing all the time, I absolutely would have done it. But every time it showed me a new thing, I was like, I want to play with the new thing. And then I was like, oh, the new thing I'm doing here, or the new way of playing, or the way it's trying to encourage me to do this is actually really fun. And I'm getting more out of it. And I'm kind of getting that immersion of I am a different character. And of course, this different character would handle and compete and handle a fight differently.
And the best
and then as well,
Dave, I would say, is that present day one-on-one Street Fighter
against fake Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, well, it's the fake Hulk Hogan, but it's like every fighter that you fight, you know, there's a benefit to hanging around in the fights because you learn different skills, and then those different skills will then help you later on.
That's one of the coolest things about the present day chapter is that, like, almost like as a trophy, you kind of pick the order you want to do those opponents in, and as you beat them, you take on one of their skills that you can then use to devastating effect, possibly against the next guy.
Exactly, and it depends if the other fight is like they move across the spaces quicker, or they're bigger and like they're tougher or something,
or they invite an attack, they want you to attack first, or
and then that way, going through learning the different skills and finding out the sort of way to use them in that combat to get the different effects of it. You could just I mean, like, in theory, you can just. I did not brute force my way through it. I kind of was studying each fight as I learned more skills and deciding
most
which
importantly,
is the best
to the thing Barry was talking about, I wanted to.
Right.
You know
that's fair enough. You know,
I did as well. But like, look, I didn't want to finish Elden Ring, but am I going to accept that it probably would well be the game of the year? Yeah. And I feel like that's just my taste and my opinion rather than anything that the game didn't do particularly well in that case. It's that's more on, that feels like that's more on me than it is on the game. But yeah, I think, you know, we're 5 people, we've all got different diverse tastes, I think.
I don't know, I just feel like Citizen Sleeper is just so much more of an interesting game.
I wish I played it. I really do.
Because the thing about Citizen Sleeper is I just, and look, the wind is blowing that way. I think it is what it is. I think it's such an injustice for it to not get an award at all. And this is part of why, if you remember when like Immortality did win, I was like, what, dude, what? Like the point that myself and Marco come back to all the time about kind of the story itself being the reward for the decisions you make. That is a point that in conversations not about Citizen Sleeper, you read any book, magazine, blog, YouTube video, podcast where people talk about narrative in games and decisions in games, the hypothetical great story and decision-based gameplay that people want in video games is in Citizen Sleeper. Do you know what I mean? When people talk about, you know, even in celebrated story games like Fallout, where people say, you know, but sometimes it can't be that it's kind of like your A and B choices, nuke this town or be a nice man. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like Citizen Sleeper is what people say they want, which is they want tangible, emotionally motivated decisions that the reward or the justification of the decision is in the writing that the game has given you up to that point. Do you know what I mean? And I just feel like it's one of those things that like we might be talking next year, we might be talking about 2 different story games in the story category, and we'll be having this exact conversation. Oh, I wish there was, you know, do you get where I'm coming from? It's like this is the type of game that I think the industry is pining for, and that in conversations about other games, they describe hypothetical story games that Citizen Sleeper actually is. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it's getting really hard done by here, but the
problem is if you put Citizen Sleeper to a vote against any of the other 3 games left, it loses.
Yeah.
So
but can I just say as well, I think Live Alive, it's almost like
we talked a lot about the combat. It's not the narrative is the most interesting thing about that game, not the combat.
Why I disagree with Mark on the last chapter is, I think the 7 chapters most people will play through and they might have a different favorite, but to me, like the one I connected to most was the Imperial China one. So where you have like the old master and you're one of his students.
Great story.
Yeah, and the other 2 students get taken out by like a rival clan, and then
fucking music rocks in it as well.
Yeah, the music is incredible, and then you have to ascend and become the master and go and fucking shove it up that Imperial. And to me, that's why when I got to that last chapter and you got the choice, I was like, I'm going with my dude from Imperial China. I feel like this
also
is
Barry talked about the choice thing. There's the double-edged choice there, where you actually actively choose which of the one you save. Like the master's training 3 apprentices. You choose one, the other 2 die,
but you
and
don't
the 3 characters you choose have completely different stats.
Heartbreaking. It feels heartbreaking to lose those other 2.
My bigger issue, because I very much liked the China chapter. I have no issues with that. My bigger issue when I talk about the last chapter. So I can't remember which character is that you pick exactly, but like, so when you have all of your characters, there's like I can't remember if it's like they have a special weapon or an ability or whatever. And to find it, each character has a dungeon specific to them that you have to go into to find it. And they all are like the worst tropes of those like 2D JRPG dungeons where there's like 1,000 different fucking ways that you have to go. And it's the one area or the one part of the game where they reintroduce random encounters, which almost at that point the game doesn't do. And it's one of the things that I liked about the game is it didn't do random encounters. It decides to throw it back in here. And there's one particular dungeon where you have like 4 different basements, and within them there are like fucking 25, 30 different doors that are all locked. And to find a key for those doors, you have to go into random encounters, and it's like every 5th or 6th enemy will drop that key. But then there's only like 3 or 4 doors out of these 50 odd fucking doors across the 4 dungeons that are the ones that you actually need to open. And all of that, my friend, is complete bullshit. And I thought that dungeon was it was kind of like my yak moment in God of War. I was like, I am this close to fucking just sacking it off, and I ended up just.
The funniest thing is that dungeon is completely optional.
Yeah, you don't have to do that dungeon.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to. But if you're trying to do all of these kind of things with the characters and get all the special upgrades and whatnot, that's part of it. And yes, it is optional. But I was still
completely optional too. Yeah. It's not like you actually have to seek it out. It's not like the stuff in Neon White, which is very difficult to avoid. This is very easy to avoid.
Yeah, but it's
in there. It's like if you're enjoying the game and you want to soak up all the side quests, like yeah,
because I can't comment because I did avoid them. I just played the last chapter of the game, so I can't. I don't know. I didn't play them. Yeah. But the reason I like the last chapter the most is because you go through the 7 things, and then they drop you into an 8th where you play like the most generic Final Fantasy / Dragon Gate story ever, and you play through it. It's the classic: princess has been kidnapped. Go through the cave, kill the guy who kidnapped the princess. You fail, then you're from demise and despair, you become the bad guy, and then you go in and you bring back your other 7 characters to stop the bad guy you became. But my absolute favorite part of that is if you look at the menu, you can realize, because they give you the choice, it's like, which of the 7 characters that you played of the chapters would you like to lead off to stop the character from the 8th chapter? But then you realize, wait a minute, I can still choose the character from the 8th chapter, in which you go through like a boss rush of just fucking killing all the characters from the rest of the chapters, and the bad ending is just the bad guys win and all your heroes die.
It's deadly. Yeah, it's deadly. I really
very much like that.
So good.
I do like the ending.
Yeah. I really want to. God, I want to go back to that final chapter and do it that way. Like it's
you just you go to the final boss fight of all of the chapters you played, but you play as the boss, and as the boss you just kill the characters and win. It's so cool.
I do like as well that if you are losing, does get to the point where it's like, you know what, you just want to blow up the earth and just be like,
you just
know what, more games to go. Do you know what, you want to blow up the earth?
Yeah, do you fancy blowing up the earth?
Like blowing up the earth.
Yeah, like I feel like I feel 1,000 times stronger about Live Live than I do Splatoon ultimately. But if you do put it to the vote against Citizen Sleeper, if I'm being honest about it, like I can't vote for a game that I hard outed of after 50 minutes. It wasn't like, oh, this is, it's like, no, just no. I can't vote for that over a game I did very much enjoy. I can't. Even if I'm honestly somewhat inclined to agree that I think the passion is ultimately stronger, it would be disingenuous of me to vote for it.
Same. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I voted for Xenoblade Chronicles in music.
Listen, if you kept Xenoblade here, we kick Splatoon right out.
Listen to you fucking slag off Signalis for the last 12
hours.
I
was thinking when Mark was talking about the dungeon and talking about a whole load of locked doors, I was like, oh, well, I think Garrett's
no, because every key is for a specific door, and the map tells you specifically that, hey, like the game is very, very smart and intuitive about telling you that key goes to that door. And
we caught Signalis 6 hours ago.
Just not.
Sorry, Barry. I just had to one more time.
Just you want to throw another shot at God of War? Just just for the good old days.
Yeah, we've put the shoe into Jack enough on this. Yeah. So I think, unfortunately,
I've got nothing. Nothing this year.
I just have to sit back.
You hate Elden Ring.
yeah.
Mark, let's have a conversation with Mark, lads, about
Elden
how
Ring is not in my
he's
top
trying to
3,
resist this idea that he's a From guy now. Like, just embrace it, okay?
I guess that we've sat here. Like, I understand the idea that, like, we've sat here for 15 hours and we're going to end up saying the words Elden Ring at the... I get it. It's really boring. We sat here for all this time and we are just going to end up saying the words Elden Ring and giving it Game of the Year. It's not exciting. I understand that. But, like, that's, like, the biggest argument for why it gets Game of the Year. It does sit so far above everything else that it's just Elden Ring.
You're totally right, Garrett. Is like, normally coming into this is like, there's been a couple of years where like, I don't know what's going to win Game of the Year, and that's really exciting to me. The only category that I came into this recording with, I think, is a mortal lock. It's Elden Ring is winning Game of the Year.
I know it's boring. Like, we sat here for all this time and we are just going to say Elden Ring, but it's like, it is a towering behemoth that just stands above everything.
And like, I talked about again, I totally take your point about me with Pokemon and Live Alive, Barry, that you can argue how much it really did convert me when I already was like dipping a toe in the water of turn-based combat. This is the conversion game. It converted Mark, and it absolutely, like, I am not only, the reason I have not gotten anywhere near the end of this game is not that I don't want to beat this game is that I want to beat all 238 bosses in this game. I want to clear this game out, and I am going to take however long that takes, and I am not going to stop playing this game. There may be weeks where I don't play it that much. There may be weeks where I'm only playing this game. I'm obsessed with this. I have become a lore pervert of this game to a shameful degree. I think it's a fucking masterpiece of a game. I think, again, making one of the most notoriously trademark inaccessible subgenres of games accessible as they can be is an incredible feat, because you look at other games that kind of have that rep, and look how long fucking Monster Hunter has been trying it. This is an accessible one, guys, and there's never been one. They are lying. There has never been an accessible Monster Hunter game. Stop fibbing. Whereas this actually, like, again, there is only, in my back catalog, there is only one. This is super deliberately hard. These bosses are going to ruin your life games that I have turned on in a favorable way, and it's become a favorite, and that's Cuphead. But I think that's apples and oranges. With Elden Ring, it's a different experience. Yes, there are hard bosses in this too, but it's a completely fucking different thing. This game is just unbelievable. I love it so much.
Though, like, because I argue that Elden Ring isn't Game of the Year, nor would I ever want to, because I can see everything great about it. For me, and I know this is probably going to raise people's ire, so I'm sorry. For me, wish I had a difficulty setting. Just do.
No, I'm not one of these people that's like, no, you have to play it on hard mode. Like I have always hated the kind of hardcore from people who were just like, no, just get good, son. I was like, no, because like I really would have liked to have, like, I love everything about the aesthetic of Bloodborne, but before I came to Elden Ring, I was like, I'm not touching that with a fucking barge pole, mate. The closest I came was very much living vicariously through Barry. Like, genuinely, one of my favorite moments in video games of the last several years was seeing him down Father Gascoigne in one, to the astonishment of the chat. But yeah, like I'm totally somebody that's like, no, like, put an easy mode in. I don't care. It doesn't force me as a normal player, like a normal difficulty player, to play it any easier. Why not? Like, I'm all for, in whatever way you want to interpret it, making a game more accessible to wider audiences.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I'm happy to say I'm a coward. I ran away from everything.
Yeah.
I was collecting runes for a fight that I was never actually going to have because I couldn't beat anything. That's fine. I know all of that. I'm aware of what my limitations are, or it's not even limitations. If I bash my head against this thing enough, I would be able to do it. I just don't want to. And it's a shame, because I've seen a good sort of 10 hours of what this thing is. And and I've seen better people, some of them on this call right now, playing the game and looking like they're having a blast. And I wish that was me. But that's the only knock on it, really. I can't really bring, anything else up as an argument against it as a whole package. There might have been things that I thought looked better, or things that I thought had better stories, or things that I thought had better music. But as a total package, does anything really come close this year? I don't think it does.
No, not even. Like, there's a reason it's so boring as a pick. There really is. Like, it's because everything about this game is just phenomenal. Everything. Well, you might say there's some popping. It has that going again. There you go. There is a negative about Elden Ring. It has a little.
I think the game is allowed popping, considering how much.
Considering what it's doing. But when you think about combat, when you think about world design, when you think about art, when you think about music, when you think about scale, because everybody has that moment in this game where you think you know how big this game is, and then you realize how big this game is.
Even when
everybody has that moment.
Even when you've got the whole map unlocked, that's not the whole map.
Yeah.
Like when I found out there's underground cities.
Yeah, there's a whole second map underneath
underground
the map.
cities.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the biggest point
easier?
I think the biggest point of contention I have with this game is just the way around it, how it explains to you how things work, specifically UI based. I think this game is, I'm not going to say atrocious, but because I think that language is more born out of my own frustration with it. But I think the way it tries to explain to you, or doesn't explain to you, a lot of the UI and how things kind of fit together, or where you need to go to do certain bits and pieces, I think it's quite poor in that regards, and I think a lot of it is kind of like dependent on you having played these games to understand what vigor is and how you
when people said like you need to make a spreadsheet and notes and stuff, I was like, oh man, really? Like I spend all day looking at spreadsheets, I spend all day writing emails and stuff. Like when I play a video game, I just want it to be
I gotta say though, again, as a guy who wasn't into these games, like I came in with no experience playing any of them, and I like, not that I figured it out that I'm a master of menus and stuff like that, but it's just accessible enough. Like literally, like you go into each stat, you go, right, number goes up, that's good, number goes down, that's bad. And then for each of the like vigor and stuff like that, when you go to upgrade it, literally to the right of where it says vigor, it has like two lines. This is what vigor is.
That bit's easy.
It's
the quests. So like, you start a quest, there's nowhere that will like collect all of your quest line information. Like I might bump into somebody I saw like 4 hours ago and I'm like, oh, it's that one guy, like Kieran Culkin and fucking Scott Pilgrim. And I just think like there's no, to me, like, you don't want to Far Cry it where you've got loads of points on the maps, because clearly like that ruins the sort of freeform exploration style of the game. But would it kill them to have a quest list of how far? To be
fair, since you played the game, Jack, they have patched in. They put character locations on the map.
Yeah,
I'll have
so
which is great,
slightly easier.
Yeah. The combination of the adding in the character location, making it slightly easier, and that like, if you're not just like hitting as a triangle to skip through lines of dialogue, is like most of the time they will give you, this is where I'm going to be, or this is where the thing is.
Okay.
They will say like, I think of the girl who you're trying to find her father, and if you just skip through, if you're somebody who in the open world just skips through the dialogue to get so that there's a quest, then you're going to like, you probably will miss it because you're skipping through. But like, she will say within a couple of lines, he goes, oh, he's chilling out at Stormvale on one of the battlements, and then lo and behold, you're in Stormvale. Here he is. There's the cunt over there.
It's one of those things where it's like, it is undoubtedly like more inconvenient that you can't just pause and look at, like 95% of other games have a quest log, right,
or a waypoint,
but I will say that, and I'm glad they added things, like I'm glad they updated it to at least put the character locations. I think that's a good move. But I will say I will take in a heartbeat them not having a quest log, because this game was so perfectly timed, because it does exist as the antithesis of basically everything else.
Mr. Duncan on me for failing to say antithesis earlier. Thanks very much. I didn't notice that.
I love the idea of the antithesis of everything else. Like as a kid who grew up listening to like punk rock and heavy metal, like that was me, right?
Is this the antithesis?
Yeah. What I didn't realize was like I was a dumb idiot who's like, oh right, so Iron Maiden and Metallica have both sold like 80 to 100 million albums, so they're not really the alternative choice. Lots of people listen to them, but there are some things in video games that are helpful and good. Quest logs are good because I like to complete quests. I like to know where I am in quests. I like to know how many I've got to do, how many side quests are. I'd love like a proper like in-depth, here's how many bosses there are, like all of this kind of built into the menu, and maybe only after you discover them, but at least seeing the how many there are. And it can just be question marks and a location to say, okay, so if you want to battle all of the Elden Ring bosses, there are 230. You can go into a sub menu and it just shows you all of the lines, and it will give you a rough location, and it won't tell you what they're called or what they look like or any of that stuff until you discover it yourself. And then it's in there and you're like, oh yeah, I remember this boss in this dungeon that I couldn't beat. Now I'm much higher level. I can go back there and beat it and stuff like that. You have to write that down or remember that. And I'm sorry, that is worse.
I don't know if it is. Put like 200 guide writers out of a job.
It is. It depends. Like,
but it depends. It does depend because it's like, and it's like, I mean, I remember when this game came out, everyone was doing their like parody screenshots where they put like their fake Ubisoft shit all over the Elden Ring screenshots, and it was so funny and so insightful. But it's funny. So I mean, it is too far, but you kind of have to, if you want to stand out and you want to really say we're not going to do that, you kind of have to go the other extreme, because to me, I actually, and again, like I've played Bloodborne, and I really only did that because I wanted something interesting to stream. I had no intentions of becoming Mr. Souls man, but like
that is what they call you.
That's what they call me in the streets. But like, to me, it's just it sounds really hyperbolic, but to me, to put a list, even if it was all question marks, to put a list on the menu and say, there are 280 bosses in this game, that takes something from it to me.
It
do you know what I mean?
Something
because
I like
not knowing,
achieve artistically.
I know we all
like,
know there's X amount in there because everyone said it, but I like not actually being told. Do you know what I mean?
It's the purest expression of the joy of discovery. Like, because even one of my favorite games ever made, Breath of the Wild, doesn't go the whole way in that. It goes some of the way. And I think that's maybe the halfway point that it addresses some of the things you need, Jack, from your experience, while still retaining some of the challenge. But I think in terms of what
Breath of the Wild, to me, like, and I know this might cause a bad reaction, but to me, Breath of the Wild is a much better open world exploration game for that, because it has that blend of styles.
I think they're ultimately doing, like, because the problem,
I find it hard to compare.
Most of the points of frustration you'd have with Elden Ring are conscious design choices.
Yes,
it's not the case that these things don't exist because they just didn't consider them. Like, the game is actively hostile toward you. That's the way it is. Yes. And like, if you're like, I do not like that, totally understand.
Totally,
yeah. If you're like, the game is anti-me while I'm playing it, and I understand if you're like, no, thank you, I would not like the game to be actively trying to harm me.
It's also this game's way of trying to teach you. You know, by being hostile to you, by, like, if it was like hands off for the first, like, relatively hands off or relatively training wheels for the first 5 hours, you are getting fucking minced as soon as you get outside that ring fence. It needs to be hostile to you. It needs to be that oppressive, that quick. But to not point, break
ultimately,
this.
like what makes discovery so good is the fact that you're discovering things. You're not being led to them. It's not a path. Everything you found because you're just like that way.
And you can have this idea in your head, like, I'm going to go to, you know, I keep mentioning Stormvale, but like, say it's Stormvale. It's like, I'm going to go to Stormvale. I know Godric the Grafted is there. I'm going to go fucking straight for him. And then you will find something that might that you didn't know was there, that there's no map marker or anything like that. You just go into a room while you're in Stormvale Castle and you find a thing, and that thing takes you off for 3 or 4 hours trying to figure out, like, how can I use this thing?
Sometimes that thing literally takes you off to another part of the map.
Yeah. Like, and there's things like, so when I got the Morning Star, this mace in the game. So like, one of the things it does that, like, I think at first you get intimidated when you're not used to these games with lots of numbers, that you're kind of like, how the fuck, I know I can't use this yet because it's got the red X, but how the fuck do I use it? And like, if you don't take a breath, you go, it's imperceptible. But you look and you go, okay, right, it needs me to have like, you know, level 10 of this, blah, blah, blah. So you upgrade and then you unlock the Morning Star. And the moment when I was like, right, I'm going to try out the Morning Star in this dungeon. And in a lot of the dungeons in the game, there are these skeletons, and you swipe at them with a standard weapon, and they will like crumple into a pile of bones. But then maybe is about 5 seconds, Garrett, and then they reanimate, pull themselves back together, and they come at you again. And the moment where I was like, I'm trying out the Morning Star, oh, it's these skeleton cunts again, and I hit my special attack with the Morning Star, and it unleashes this wave of holy energy, and that kills them completely dead. The moment where I'm just like standing there with my voice, I'm like, oh, yeah, like, it's just, you know, you fucking bottle that, and I will buy it.
That's what this game is. That game is that feeling bottled over and over again. That feeling of like personal accomplishment.
Yes. And I talked about that moment earlier on of like demigod fell. I felt immortal in that moment. Like,
and it's like, this is gonna sound so stupid about a game that is gigantic and stuffed to the gills with content, but bear with me while I'm saying this here. In its own weird way, it is kind of minimalist, because the stuff you see is the stuff you see, and it's kind of like, you know, you go to a certain dungeon, you get your ass kicked, you say, okay, fuck it, I'll come back later. But maybe you don't come back later because you got distracted by something else. It's like, well, it's for the best that that's not part of your journey then. Whereas if you had a menu item that said, you were here earlier, you have this checkpoint there, you can go there, here's the item that's there, here's the boss that's there, you'd be compelled to this game. For as many numbers get thrown around about it, like obviously now, because you know we're all online, we know the number of bosses, right? We know the number of XYZ. But when you're playing the actual game, it's not a game to be min-maxed, and it's not a game, despite being an open world game with 7 bajillion bosses, it's not a game to be checklisted. It doesn't want to be a checklisted, and that's why it doesn't have those menu options. They would absolutely make it easier and less abrasive to play, but it doesn't want to give you a list because it doesn't want you to check things off a list.
And as well, in terms of that, like amount of things there are in the game and the open world design, I think like the design of this world is unbelievable because there are so many little kind of areas or things you might see in the distance when you're riding around on Torrent or trying to get somewhere else, where it's like, I wonder what would happen if I went down, up, or in there. And I've never in this game, every time I've had that instinct, it's never been nothing.
Yeah.
Anything that looks remotely worthy of exploration, and there is so much. There is so, in spite of how big it is, there's very, if you understand my meaning, there's very little empty space. Because there's always something somewhere nearby. And it could be, you know, you're going around what looks like a big open field and a fucking giant it like gets up out of the ground and starts coming for you. It could be it could be that there's these enormous cavernous ruins that look like there's nothing there except a couple of like giant rats and stuff like that, and then you find there's like this staircase that goes down and there's an incredible weapon or upgrade or something like that in there.
Or you could like bash your head against Stormvale Castle over and over again, or you could realize if you look around, there's a little path underneath it where you can just go skip the entire castle and come out the other side and keep on exploring.
Yep, you can just skip right past the castle. There's I think even yes,
there's a little path where you could just walk underneath the castle, come out the other side, and continue exploring the other side without doing the castle.
Yeah, you can cheese it.
Oh my god!
Because when I was still trying to get over that wall, I was watching a tutorial video that was just like, here's, if you've never played these games before, here's a couple of tips to stop you from having the shite scared out of you. And one of them was, I'm going to get you a very decent basic weapon for each kind of build you might want to later do. And one of them was him showing me the path under Stormvale, because there is like right on the far side of it, there's a cool little weapon if you want to do a faith build. Even within Stormvale Castle itself, and it is very interesting. I'm sure in later locations it's a similar kind of thing. Within Stormvale, there are about 4 different ways to attack that one castle, to like enter, go around, interact with. There are definitely ways where you can basically go and kill every living thing in there. There are ways you can kind of sneak past and try to get to Margit, get to Godric.
Stormville's such a weird castle for me because it feels like a end of game castle. It's like, but it's the first. Well, it's not. It doesn't have to be the first castle.
Yeah, but it is.
But
if you follow what the game like, the gentle, and it's the only kind of gentle hints the game really gives you is those
golden trails,
the little trails of light. That kind
which
of
will
point
lead you to another site of grace, which is
yes, and if you follow that path in the first couple of hours, it leads you towards Stormvale.
Yeah.
So it's the game's way of,
and that
this
castle
is as close as you're getting.
Way more punishing than any other castle that I think I did like 3, and then one of them obviously like you do the festival and that sort of takes half the challenge away because then you go to Starscourge from there. You mentioned Torrent there, and that reminded me because obviously I have to come to this and bring out the things I don't like about the game to balance out the the plaudits and whatnot.
Yeah.
At times with this game, the biggest challenge or opponent or enemy that you come across is the camera. And there's 2 specific areas with that: flying enemies and riding on Torrent. I hate the horse combat in this game. I just
really
do.
I understand why
the horse combat.
Let me tell you about a little horse called Roach in The Witcher 3, my friends. Well, you know nothing of difficult horse combat.
I care about The Witcher 3.
I think the horse combat is like actively way easier in this game.
I thought it was all right. Yeah, I thought it was good as well.
There are times when like you've got a couple of enemies coming towards and you kind of slap them on the back of the head and off you go, and that feels great. But there are times when you get into like one-on-one encounters where it's not I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's like as a big knight on a horse.
Cavalry.
Yeah, and like you're running around in circles against each other, just like trying to slap it in with your sword, and I hated it. It did not feel anyway like there was. I thought you were doing something tactically. It was just like you're trying to get a slap in, and hopefully you can get away before it slaps you back. And it didn't
sure that's how horse combat works.
That was my entire playthrough experience.
Or engaging.
I loved it because what I was doing was
get off the horse and fight him in a more fun way. Then
because you can. You don't have to be on the horse.
That's not happening.
Because like
and again, flying enemies as well is the other thing.
I give it flying enemies are cunts, but the horseback combat's pretty good.
In any game, I don't like flying enemies unless unless I can also fly. I don't like flying enemies.
But you can't in this, surprisingly.
I think that I have had great fun with horse combat, because what I'm doing is like I'm charging like I'm in a fucking joust, and then I'm doing wide circle and then coming back and we're charging at each other again, and it just feels like this epic fucking like butting heads over and over again. And then you start learning that when you're on the horse combat, you can use the trigger and shoulder button on the other side to do your swing from the left-hand side. So you can start looking at where the Knight's Cavalry or the Tree Sentinel is holding his sword and getting ready to swing for you. And at the last minute, you can kind of like duck and go to the other side and unleash a sword swing from the other side, so that you are dodging and getting a strike in the one go. Stuff like that like is just that little extra layer to it, like compared to like I said, like a thing like Roach, where half the time you call Roach and he's on a shed. You
can also, like, for horse fights, you can get like stuck on the enemy's blind side, where they're turning and you're turning the same way, so they can't do fucking shit. You can just wail on them.
It also rewards you for looking at the very quickly. You realize to look at the bar on the horse rather than the bar of like the Knight's Cavalry, the Tree Sentinel, because if you can perfectly time a strike and then jump off as you slay the horse, there you can get, I think, like, depending on the boss, you can get like 2 criticals in on a boss that has just been knocked off horseback, and that feels immensely satisfying as well. Once I figured out that, because like I think very early doors, that first Tree Sentinel Limgrave is incredibly intimidating, because that's the first time you see a hyper aggressive enemy once you aggravate it. But once you kind of like, I didn't do him first. He wasn't my first horse combat boss. I did one of the Knight's Cavalry first. And once I figured it out by doing that, because he was slightly less aggressive. Once I kind of got, right, this is my horse combat strategy, I came back and I'm having a fucking boatload of fun doing it. I will say again, and it is kind of it's on almost in all video games that involve a flying boss thing. I will totally cede your point on that. That said, when I beat my first dragon, it was
I feel like there's those little like pterodactyl dudes that they suck. I hate them.
To be honest, like the
sword foot cunts.
Cool. The dragons, most of the combat takes place when they're on the ground anyway, and you're just kind of like slapping at the legs.
And there's something to when like the dragon is in the air and you really can't see it. I kind of prefer it that, like, if it's say blocked on the dragon, it's like that moment of panic when like I know the dragon is in the air, but I don't know where, and it lands in your head and fucking kills you.
Those gargoyle vampire motherfuckers, they can fucking just...
They suck. Yeah. Terrible things.
But on the horse, I do want to say that, like, it's pretty cool that
we're having a multiple minute conversation about horse combat. I fucking love this show, man.
The kings of the super hard, inaccessible game they've like solved in a really interesting way that I hope AAA games steal. They solved a lot of problems when it comes to like getting on and getting off a horse.
Oh
they
my
made
God,
it,
it's
they
so
made it a
easy.
ghost horse, so you just summon it and you're just instantly on it. And when you get rid of it, it just disappears. There's none of this animation getting off, animation getting on, accidentally hitting it. It runs away. You have to get it back. You have to put your fucking right ammo type back in your gun. Red Dead 2. Oh my fucking God. Whereas this game is just like the fucking horse is gone now.
Let me just say, Pokemon Legends Arceus did that first.
Can I say as well, the first time you stumble into that, when you're sprinting with the horse, you can do like a super jump dismount to give you like an almighty jumping R2. Incredible. Oh fuck!
Like, there's also like the fun little system where when the horse dies, you can use like one of the flasks to revive it. So there's like a little risk reward to bring the horse back.
What a way to start off any like storming of a settlement or something like that, to fucking run in on torrent full speed and just launch in the air with a fucking weapon.
Yes, a good video game.
Elden Ring, like third, maybe.
Okay, so I think.
So what are we saying here? Citizen Sleeper, Elden Ring, Splatoon. Did we say?
The only thing that remains to decide is what are second and third. What order are we going in?
Just to show
There's two people that distinctly don't care.
I don't care. Sorry.
So
I'm alive second guy.
I would go Live second, and then Splatoon 3 third, probably, if I had to choose.
Okay.
All time.
Yeah, that's probably how I would go. Okay, that was relatively painless.
It's funny how painful getting to 3 was, and then 3 is like just an inevitability.
Like I say, the lowest guy on this podcast on Elden Ring agrees that Elden Ring should be Game of the Year. So that was set in stone from the first moment. So yeah.
Okay. To the delight of many people, and particularly Sean McGee, we've reached a verdict. Our 2022 Games of the Year. In third place, Splatoon 3. In second place, Live Alive. And your 2022 Game of the Year, Elden Ring.
Listen, everybody, it's not the most interesting pick for Game of the Year, but it's best game of the year. That's the question we have to ask ourselves.
Yeah. Gentlemen, we did it.
Oh my God. Oh,
finally. I can't wait to tot
till next year.
I think this is nearly 15 hours worth of videos and podcasts.
Content. If anyone's still listening at this point, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Before we get to the fan poll as well, because like that's the listener poll as well.
I wonder what they picked.
Will there be any juice on that? I don't want to forget that for Game of the Year of all things. But like a sincere thank you to anybody that listens, because like, to be fair, the 5 of us were in a room, we'd have a lot of fun arguing this shit out. But like, people listening and enjoying and interacting with us gives us the excuse to do this more often. So yeah, incredible. Gentlemen, does anybody want to venture a guess as to what the listeners' Game of the Year was?
Elden Ring.
I mean, it's Elden Ring.
Does anybody want to guess any spicy contenders for anything that like runner-ups or?
Looking at the list
God of
here,
War is 2, which will vindicate Jack a little bit.
I'm going to guess Vampire Survivors will be 2 or 3.
Okay. Would it shock everybody to learn that this was the biggest split we've ever had in Game of the Year? In terms of the amount of different games that got votes.
It's because we had so many.
However, only 2 games got more than 3 votes.
Wow.
What? Yes. In second place, because there's like a 5 or 6 way tie.
Wow, that's hilarious.
There's like so many. Like, what have I got here? I can see Immortality's on 3 votes.
Give us the 3. Give us like the split for the 3.
I think we've got. Oh no, sorry, we've only got 3 on 3 votes.
Okay.
So on 3 votes, so sharing the bronze medal, we've got Immortality, Ragnarok, and Arceus, which I think is the big surprise there.
Wow.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me. It was a real good game.
In second place, so now I'll go to percentages. In second place, carrying 12.5 or 12.2%. So you get second place with 12.2, shows you how much this is split. Right?
Oh God.
Vampire Survivors.
Yeah.
Barry's on the money.
Yeah.
And carrying this category. So we're jumping from 12.2 to 34.1% for Elden Ring.
Citizen Sleeper. All righty. Let's go.
Citizen Sleeper received no votes.
No votes.
No
God
votes.
damn. Just shit and piss on the grave, baby. Just get it in there.
How many other games got 0 votes?
A fair few.
Loads, I'd say. Yeah. I mean,
We have like
25 games here.
We have like 3 on 3. We have like maybe 2 or 3 on 2 votes, and then a handful on 1. So there's probably a good 8 to 10 games looking at the size of our list that didn't get a single fucking vote. Because the thing with them is like, obviously we do our order list of 3, but when people do the vote, they can only pick 1.
Right.
Right. So that's gonna skew things quite a bit. I respect the hell out of the one person named Carrot Gidney, obviously, I'm sure, who voted Xenoblade.
It was me.
So. It was. Yeah. It's not going to be like Mark or Mark's the impassioned thing and then forgot you didn't actually vote for that.
I gotta remember to vote next year.
I definitely voted Signalis for this. I know I can. Much.
Oh yeah. I thought you were going to say that you didn't in the earlier card. I was like, I guess I just a spreadsheet. But yeah, no. This is really enjoyable. Thanks to everybody. Garrett, a stellar debut on Game of the Year. Knocked it out of the
I'm
park.
pretty happy.
Yeah.
There's not a ton that went against me. This is a very good year for you. You have to tear me down next year, you see.
Yeah, we need to sort that out for next year, I think.
Yeah, I think next year might finally be the year where Jack dominates Game of the Year. It feels like one of those things where like the turnaround is coming. He's been the people's champion for many years now. So It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time.
I need a W, please.
Yeah.
This has somehow been like my most favorite edition of this, and also my least favorite because I've just got nothing.
That's the most Mark Robinson thing I've heard you say in a long time.
Classic Mark. This was great, but my head hurts. Yeah.
It's a real journey versus the destination debate. Because I think we've had our most interesting conversations. But I look at some of them winners, and Mark, where did we land on this podcast? We're starting. Come on, me, you, and Gerstmann, wasn't it? Come on,
that's right.
We're still smarting over Neon White.
We'll do a bunch of Twitch streams this year and just bitch about it on there.
Oh, hell yeah.
More like Neon shite.
Thanks again, of course, Barry, for us haranguing you once again into doing this.
Genuinely my pleasure. It is my pleasure every single year to do it.
I'll hit us up with the plugs here. At Link to the Cast is where you need to go. We'll be taking a couple of weeks off at the start of January, as we customarily do, but we will be back for what would be the 8th or 9th season, basically, of this podcast now. At this stage is the 8th, I think.
I don't know.
The annual,
it's past midnight. I'm not counting at this point.
I feel like the annual Sean McGee special this year will just be a fucking victory lap as well. By the way.
Oh yeah. Oh, the rubbing in that's going to happen. Yeah, so this is the 8th game of the year. So we start in the 9th season, essentially, of the podcast at some stage in January with the annual McGee special. So look forward to that. At Link to the Cast, where you need to go to get subscribed. Check out links to, if you were listening to the audio version of this, to see the video version, or if you came across the video version on YouTube, to check out the actual podcast that we do every week. Individually, I'm at the Dates Dave. Mark is at Lithium Project. Jack is at Jack Lizell. Garrett is at Garrett Kidney. Barry is at the Barry Lad. R.I.P. Don West. We love you, my man.
R.I.P. to Big Don.
Yeah. And yeah, we will see you in 2023 for more of this, I guess. Bye. Happy New Year, everyone.
It's been emotional.